afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Okay, good evening. I don't know who made these rules. All right, all good? कितनी देर का सेशन हो चुका है? हाँ? 3 hours. It started at 1. All right, let's begin. I'll try to be as quick as possible as I can be, but let's see. Not too quick. The general guidelines remain the same as they were yesterday. One, with respect to the session, we are here less for the content but more for the structure. More to get those extra marks, not to get the initial 3 or 4 marks. In case of case studies, please understand, those who have attended our sessions of case study, they might know this thing. For case studies, simply if you write a complete answer, forget about the content. Obviously content is important, we'll talk about content part. Simply if you write the complete answer, if you address all the portions of the case study decently well, no unique points, simple answer to case study, you shall be able to fetch good marks then. You can fetch out of 20, around 8 marks simply by completing the answer. One, it is difficult to complete the answer, as other teachers would have told you. I will tell you again, it is difficult to complete the ethics paper because the questions that you come across are mostly of new nature. If you have seen previous year questions, then you will not be surprised. If you have not seen previous year questions, you will always be surprised in ethics paper. Previous year questions are the biggest guide to this this paper. There is, because there is no particular source, hence you are always looking for कि कहाँ से पढ़ें, क्या से इस पेपर के सवाल हम आंसर कर पाएंगे. सोर्स क्योंकि कोई नहीं है, सोर्स है प्रीवियस ईयर पेपर्स है. लुक एट द प्रीवियस ईयर पेपर्स, ट्रस्ट मी, यू विल स्टैंड टू बेनिफिट अ लॉट फ्रॉम दोज पेपर्स. So if you are simply completing your case studies answers, if you're simply writing a case study decently well, you shall be able to get 7 to 8 marks. It's a good enough marks. We will try to see that how can we get those extra 2 or 3 marks here. How can we reach that 9 or 10 marks figure, maybe 11 marks somehow. We'll try to talk about those things. Second, the first one was this, as in the reason why you should be here, you should be for these extra 2 or 3 marks. And second, when I talk about these things, I'll not be in a position to talk about the basic concepts many times. As like yesterday, I can't explain many basic concepts. I would have to assume that there is, let's say in today's paper, you know about certain values, meaning of some terms. I expect that you know, let's say, about what is meant by the term integrity, honesty, objectivity, जो कि हर साल first portion के अंदर पूछी जाती हैं terms. I'll assume those things. Many times I may talk about those things in a little bit brief manner, but I would have to assume कि आपको वो चीज़ें पता है. Before we start, how should we approach this case studies portion? How should our general answer to a case studies question be? If you look at case studies of this year or of last year, you see, इस बार तो size of case study is relatively less as compared to last year. Even this is not that big a case study as compared to some case studies last year. Ask anybody who has written last year's ethics paper. इतनी बड़ी case study थी, case study को पढ़ने में ही आपको 7-8 मिनट लग जा रहे थे. तो how are you going to attempt time? How are you going to attempt case studies in that reasonably well manner? वो जो time वाला part में बोल रहा था. How do you ensure? Just a second. Yeah. How do we ensure that you're able to write good answers in a reasonable amount of time? Approach क्या होनी चाहिए हमारी case study के answer की? Whenever you come across a case study, whenever you read a case study, in your mind, please identify immediately who are the chief stakeholders in the case. What is meant by the term stakeholder? Those who are going to take the decisions and those who are going to be directly affected by the decision. Identify the stakeholders of the case. Now you can do that. You can write that as part of your answer. That is also good enough. Or you can simply keep that in your mind कि भाई कौन हमारे chief actors या chief stakeholders हैं इस particular case में. When you write your tests, in your tests, please make sure that you do this exercise, that you explicitly write who the stakeholders are and write down what their interests are, as in what would each stakeholder like to achieve in that case. You are the decision maker, let's say part of the state. आप district magistrate हो, police officer हो, कोई CEO हो, कोई officer हो, कोई simple employee हो, person हो, somebody who has to comment, somebody who has to take a decision. Write down that I am this person or this particular entity is a stakeholder and this particular entity has this interest. Who are the entities who are going to be affected by that decision? Write those entities, stakeholders, and what is it that they would want from the decision? Stakeholders and those interests. Once you do that, now you are proceeding already in a structured way to identify what is the dilemma that might be there in the case. Dilemma क्या है? Dilemma is, briefly speaking, think of dilemma as something which is preventing you to take some action. That is not how we define dilemma. Dilemma की definition अलग होती है. अभी बताता हूँ 2 मिनट में क्या होती है. But think of the case in these terms. Think of something that is preventing you to take the right action that you would want to take. That becomes kind of a dilemma. Exactly speaking, what is a dilemma? Dilemma is a situation where the options in front of you are neither unambiguously right nor unambiguously wrong. उसको बोलते हैं ethical dilemma. You have 2 options, options A and B. There are pros and cons of option A, pros and cons of option B. Meaning there are cons of both options. It is not possible that whatever options you have will always be completely right or will be completely wrong. वो possible नहीं है. अगर कोई option बिल्कुल right है आपके सामने तो फिर dilemma किस बात का? तो आपको वही तो करना है जो बिल्कुल सही चीज़ है. Similarly, अगर कोई option बिल्कुल something that is completely wrong, you don't have a choice there. You simply not have to do that thing. There is no choice that क्या मैं ये भी कर सकता हूँ, आपको करना ही नहीं है. Dilemma की situation कौन सी है? जहाँ पे आपके पास जो options हैं neither they are unambiguously right nor are they unambiguously wrong. वो situation है. A case study will present you with such dilemmas. The key part, the key strength that you should have to be able to answer case studies quickly is if you are able to identify the dilemma. How will you be आइडेंटिफाई का मतलब क्या? आइडेंटिफाई का मतलब ये नहीं कि दिमाग में समझ आ रहा है, वो आइडेंटिफाई का मतलब नहीं है. उसको कागज पेन पे कैसे उतारोगे, वो डिफिकल्ट काम है. दिमाग में तो समझ में आ रहा है हाँ क्या प्रॉब्लम है, टू राइट इट इन सम वर्ड्स इन द आंसर. You will be able to do that only when you have done the first part, identified the stakeholders and their interests. When you start writing those things, when your pen is moving, you're identifying those things, only then you will be in a position to identify that yes, this is the exact dilemma that exists in this question. So please do that exercise whenever you're writing answer to case studies. This helps you to write quick and good answers to cases. Now, obviously, to answer case studies, there is a requirement of or a necessity of maturity. Now, maturity is something that lacks in many of us. At this stage, it lacks in many of us. That is why you should be reading newspapers. Maturity का मतलब क्या है? Maturity का मतलब है that transition yourself the shoes of civil servant. You look at civil servants. Let's say you are in awe of those civil servants. आप चाहते हो उनकी तरह बनना चाहते हो, तभी तो इस एग्जाम की प्रिपरेशन कर रहे हो. Start behaving, start thinking like a civil servant. And when you think like what is meant by thinking like a civil servant? Doesn't mean कि तुम सबके ऊपर अपना रोब जलाने लगो, चल भाई मैं IAS ऑफिसर हूँ, पुलिस ऑफिसर निकल जाए. वो नहीं सिविल सर्वेंट का मतलब. सिविल सर्वेंट का मतलब है कि आप एक रैशनल पर्सन की तरह जिसके ऊपर काफी सारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज है, दायित्व हैं बड़े सारे. Many people look up to you to get their demands, to get their interests fulfilled. Many people who have differing interests, they look up to you. You have X interest, you have X interest that conflicts with X. These people have different interests and they look up to you to get these interests fulfilled. How will you behave in that situation? You can't seem to be favoring one over the other. Behaving like a civil servant means this thing, behaving in that mature manner. ये है maturity. तो case studies का पेपर जो है, जो case studies का portion है, ये चाहता है कि आप एक mature person की तरह behave करो. क्या आप case पढ़कर identify कर भी पा रहे हो कि case किस चीज के ऊपर है? One necessary requirement of maturity or necessary trait that mature people express is that they read each and every word and try to understand it. They are not rushing through the case simply because I have to answer the case. They have good reading and comprehension capability. जब भी आप मटेरियल पढ़ रहे हो, अपना किताब पढ़ रहे हो, एनसीईआरटी पढ़ रहे हो, इकोनॉमिक्स की, पॉलिटी की, तो किस तरीके से उसको पढ़ रहे हो? अखबार में आर्टिकल पढ़ रहे हो, किस तरीके से पढ़ रहे हो? आप उसको ऊपर ऊपर से पढ़े जा रहे हो या फिर एक एक वर्ड इजीली कॉम्प्रिहेंड करते हुए पढ़ते जा रहे हो? ट्राई, आर यू एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट इज एक्चुअली द राइटर मीन्स? इफ यू आर एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड द केस, लुक एट द केस स्टडी इन दैट मैनर, यू आर ऑलरेडी पास्ट मेनी अदर पीपल. दिस इज द एलिमेंट ऑफ मैच्योरिटी दैट इज रिक्वायर्ड टू आंसर दीज केस स्टडीज वेल. सवाल कुछ पूछा है और आप लिख कुछ और चीज रहे हो. डायलेमा जो केस के अंदर पूछा गया है, आपने केस में कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट टर्म्स पढ़ी, आपको लगा शायद यही डायलेमा होगा. वो पूछा ही नहीं है सवाल के अंदर और आप उसको एड्रेस कर रहे हो आंसर के अंदर. भाई पता नहीं आपने मूवी ज्यादा देखी है, आपने अखबार में कुछ न्यूज पढ़ ली थी किसी एस्पेक्ट के अंदर, आपको वही डायलेमा चमक रहा है, सवाल में कुछ और चीज पूछी हुई है. You should be able to understand. This is a very very important element of case studies. 20 नंबर का सवाल है, अगर जो चीज नहीं पूछी है उसको एड्रेस करने जा रहे हो तो पूरे नंबर कट जाएंगे. ये इकोनॉमिक्स के सवाल की तरह नहीं है कि आपने, जैसे कल हमने स्ट्रक्चरल अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट का सवाल देखा, आपने स्ट्रक्चरल अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट पढ़ा, आपने स्ट्रक्चरल भी एक्सप्लेन कर दिया, सीजनल, फ्रिक्शनल, वॉलंटरी सब कुछ एक्सप्लेन कर दिया, तो आपको आंसर में 10 में से 2 नंबर मिल जाएंगे. यहाँ पे वैसा नहीं है, आपने कुछ और एक्सप्लेन कर दिया तो एग्जामिनर इज गोइंग टू बी very angry at you that what are you explaining and what I have asked. So make sure that you understand the question well. Maturity is a key element, key trait of an aspiring civil servant. This case tests you that whether you are that person who can show that maturity or not. All these case studies portion test you on that maturity. So make sure you do this thing. So how do we approach? One, we have to read the case properly, understand. This comes with maturity, with experience. Understand that what exactly is the dilemma that the examiner is, that the question is asking. One. Second, identify the stakeholders from the case, identify their interests. What does each person want? What does the decision maker want? Then when you do that, you will be able to identify the dilemma itself, that कि हाँ केस के अंदर ये dilemma है, ये मतभेद है, ये किस चीज के अंदर problems आ रही हैं. When you do that, then you will be able to see that what can be done, what are the various values in conflict in this dilemma. क्या पर्सनल वैल्यू प्रोफेशनल वैल्यू से कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हो रही है? क्या कहीं पे कोई कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट निकल के आ रहा है? क्या मेरी इंटीग्रिटी यहाँ पे कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो रही है बिकॉज आई वांट टू डू समथिंग एल्स? क्या मेरे को क्राइसिस ऑफ कॉन्शियंस है? So you are going to see that whether these things, whether these values, whether there is some conflict amongst various values, various aspects, principles or not. Once you do that, you will be able to do that only when you have identified stakeholders and their interests. Once you're able to do that, then your flow becomes very easy. Ethical dilemma आपको मिल गया, values in conflict आपको पता चल गई, then you shall be able to write the answer well, that yes, these are the values in conflict and I will choose this particular value and hence I will try to resolve it in this particular manner. तो ये एक ब्रॉड फ्रेमवर्क है. एग्जाम्पल्स के साथ जो सवाल पूछेंगे वो डिस्कस करेंगे, लेकिन ब्रॉड फ्रेमवर्क ये है. जब आप प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हो, एग्जाम में नहीं, एग्जाम इज नॉट प्रैक्टिस, एग्जाम इज एक्चुअल द मैच. जब आप प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हो तो इस तरीके से प्रैक्टिस करना है. एक कंट्रोल्ड एनवायरनमेंट में जब आप टेस्ट लिख रहे हो तब अपने आप को प्रिपेयर कर रहे हो दैट हाउ कैन आई राइट गुड आंसर्स इन लेस अमाउंट ऑफ टाइम. You have 19 questions to answer in the exam. You will never ask anybody who has written mains. You are barely able to finish first 3 papers. You are most of the time not able to finish paper 4. When you write ethics test, first time when you are writing these tests, trust me, 4 घंटे बाद खुद उठोगे ये सोच के कि अब बहुत हो गया, अब और अपने आप को चीट नहीं कर सकता हूँ. ये मैंने बताया भी था तुम लोगों को. 4 घंटे बाद खुद उठ जाओगे ये सोच के कि अब और नहीं लिख सकते हैं क्योंकि 3 घंटे का टाइम है. I have taken 4 hours. And even after 4 hours, you will not be able to finish your entire paper. How will you be able to finish how will you be able to write good answers in mains? You need to practice for that. You need to be able to develop that maturity of reading, comprehending quickly, the correct thing quickly, being able to identify the stakeholders, interests, dilemma, and how to solve the dilemma quickly. You have to do those things. Let's now understand these things with example. अब क्योंकि हम सवाल एग्जाम का डिस्कस कर रहे हैं और हमारा फोकस इस सेशन का यही है कि हम कैसे एग्जाम में आंसर लिखते, तो अब मैं वो बेसिक वाली चीज़ नहीं बताऊंगा. बेसिक वाला मैं तुमको ब्रॉडली बता दिया कि क्या करना होता है. ये आपकी प्रैक्टिस में काम आएगा. जब आप एग्जाम में, जब आप टेस्ट के आंसर लिख रहे हो तब वो चीज़ काम आएगी. यहाँ पे क्लास में मैं वो हर एक सवाल में डिस्कस नहीं कर सकता हूँ. हेयर आई एम गोइंग टू डिस्कस precisely what answer should you have written and what structure should you have used. I'm going to discuss that, but I can't discuss every detailed background part of how to arrive at a good answer. I will simply talk about the good answer, what is there in my opinion. Let's start with the first question. सबने केसेस पढ़े हैं? मैं देखो तुमको समय नहीं दूंगा केस के ऊपर विचार करने का. मैं केस पढ़ूंगा जरूर, लेकिन तुमको मेरे साथ साथ केस समझना भी होगा. कितने लोगों ने केसेस पढ़े हैं, पेपर देखा है? अब देखो, जिन्होंने पहले से नहीं देखा है पेपर, जिन्होंने देखा भी हो उनको भी याद नहीं होंगे, लेकिन बिकॉज व्हेन आई रीड दीज केसेस यू शैल बी एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड. आई कांट गिव यू टाइम टू अंडरस्टैंड द केसेस. फाइन, आई विल रीड आउट स्लोली फॉर यू. फ्रॉम दैट ट्राई टू लर्न हाउ डू वी रीड. मैं तो बोल के पढ़ूंगा, आपको एग्जाम में बोल के नहीं पढ़ना है, माइंड में पढ़ना है. लेकिन हाँ, फ्रॉम दैट ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट हाउ डू वी रीड एंड अंडरस्टैंड द केसेस इन लेस टाइम. Okay, let's look at the first case. You are working as an executive in a nationalized bank for several years. In a nationalized bank for several years. One of your close colleagues tells you that her father is suffering from heart disease and needs surgery immediately to survive. She also tells you that she has no insurance and the operation will cost around 10 lakh rupees. You are also aware that the fact that her husband is no more and she is from a lower middle class family. You are empathetic about her situation. However, apart from expressing your sympathy, you do not have resources to fund her. सबको ये पार्ट समझ में आ गया है? It is laying the background of the case. You are in a nationalized bank, सरकारी बैंक में काम करते हो, और आपकी कलीग हैं, her father is suffering from heart disease, needs surgery immediately, and the cost is 10 lakh rupees. She is not able to afford that cost. She doesn't have any insurance. She doesn't have, her husband is no more. She comes from a lower middle class family. But you, apart from expressing your sympathies, your concern, you don't also have resources yourself. You can't help her out. A few weeks later, you ask her about the well-being of her father, and she informs about his successful surgery and that he is recovering. She then confides in you that the bank manager was kind enough to facilitate release of rupees 10 lakhs from a dormant account of someone to pay for operations with a promise that it should be confidential and be repaid at the earliest. समझ में आया? उन्होंने आपसे confide किया. Your friend is confiding in you that yes, my father is well, successful surgery. How did she get the money? She confides that the bank manager was kind to facilitate release of rupees 10 lakhs from a dormant account of someone. Dormant account समझते हो? ये बताता हूँ. From someone to pay for the operation with the promise that it should be confidential and be repaid at the earliest. She has already started paying it back and will continue to do so until all of it is returned. Case clear हो गया सबको? What are the ethical issues involved in this case? Evaluate the behavior of bank manager from an ethical point of view. How would you react to this situation? 3 सवाल हैं, देखते हैं कैसे आंसर करना है. First, in all your cases, there should be an intro. I talked about importance of intro yesterday, introduction. Introduction is an insight to your answer. Introduction decides whether you are friend zoned or whether you are get attracted, examiner is attracted to you. आपको एवरेज मार्क्स मिलेंगे या फिर अच्छे मार्क्स मिलेंगे, वो पूरा का पूरा इंट्रोडक्शन के ऊपर डिपेंड करता है. व्हाट डू यू राइट इन एन इंट्रोडक्शन टू योर केस स्टडीज? इन केस स्टडीज आंसर क्या लिखते हैं इंट्रो के अंदर? बताओ. तुमने तो सारी क्लासेस अटेंड करी हैं. हाँ हाँ नहीं, स्टेक होल्डर्स. बताओ. सिचुएशन को एड्रेस करते हैं. प्रीमाइस, व्हाट प्रीमाइस? हाँ यस. देखो केस, जैसे कल हमने बात करी थी इंट्रोडक्शन में क्या नहीं लिखना है, क्या बताया था? डेफिनेशंस नहीं लिखनी है. डोंट राइट एनीथिंग दैट द examiner knows everything, but don't write anything which is, let's say, basic as definition. Don't write those things in the introduction. That is not impressive. That is right, सही है, लेकिन अच्छा नहीं है. Difference है उस चीज में. What do you write in introduction to your case studies? You write something which tells the examiner, yesterday I told, tells the examiner that you have understood the question. You have understood the dilemma that is mentioned in this case. What is the case about? किस चीज के ऊपर केस है बताओ? केस किस चीज के ऊपर है? क्या ये केस जो आपको दिया गया है यहां पे, क्या ये केस एक डाइंग पर्सन की सिचुएशन के ऊपर केस है? क्या ये केस एक गरीब पर्सन की एबिलिटी टू एड्रेस द हेल्थ ऑफ देयर फैमिली के ऊपर है? क्या ये केस मिस यूज ऑफ पावर के ऊपर है? This is on misuse of power. You can write this is a case that reflects, let's say, inequality in the society. लिख दो, सही है, गलत नहीं है, लेकिन अच्छा नहीं है, relevant नहीं है. Write that this case is about poor healthcare system in the country, but this case is not about that. Case is about ultimately a bank manager misusing his power, exercising his power to misappropriate funds in a manner that it is not known to the system. उस चीज के ऊपर केस है. So all this is noise. This is where the case lies. If you tell the examiner in introduction that I have identified this issue, then you are already on the right track. You tell the examiner that this case is about. What is this case about? किस तरीके से कोई ना कोई वैल्यू है, कोई ना कोई एस्पेक्ट ऑफ पब्लिक लाइफ है जो कि कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो रहा है यहाँ पे, तो इस तरीके से हमको लिखना है. What is this case about? This case is about unlawful exercise of your power. The case is about breach of trust. You are a bank manager, you have been given some responsibilities and you are exercising those responsibilities in an illegal or irresponsible manner. ये केस उस चीज के ऊपर है. तो अगर आपने यहाँ पे केस को ही समझ में आ रहा है ना, मैच्योरिटी वाला पार्ट जो मैंने बोला था, अगर आपने केस को यहाँ पे आइडेंटिफाई कर लिया कि केस पूर हेल्थ केयर सिस्टम के ऊपर है, इनइक्वालिटी के ऊपर है, गरीबी के ऊपर है, तो देन फिर आप ये भावनाओं में बह चुके हो, यू आर नॉट देयर ऑन द केस. एवरी क्राइम विल हैव सम जस्टिफिकेशन. व्हाई डज समबडी मर्डर समबडी? उसने मेरे को मारा था, मेरी माँ बहन को गाली दी थी, इस कारण से मैंने उसको मार दिया. तो हर क्राइम का जस्टिफिकेशन तो हो ही सकता है. अब आप उस जस्टिफिकेशन में पढ़ चुके हो रादर देन उस क्राइम को देखने के लिए. So this is where maturity lies. Identify the key issue in this case, which is misuse of power which has been given to you. If you do this in the introduction part, you are all set further. What are the ethical issues involved? कल वाली slides upload होंगी थी तुम्हारे लिए? कल वाली slides. So these slides will be there in some, when, I don't know whether the yesterday's session is already there on YouTube or not. I don't know whether, जैसे हमें अब की बार अलग अलग सब्जेक्ट्स का अलग अलग सेशन अपलोड, अरे चेक मत करो यार, रखो फोन नीचे. हाँ, वो स्लाइड्स अपलोड हो जाएंगी तुम्हारी वहाँ पे यूट्यूब की वीडियो के नीचे डिस्क्रिप्शन में लिंक आ जाएगा. ऑल दोज हु आर वाचिंग ऑनलाइन एंड यू पीपल, यू विल गेट दो स्लाइड्स. दी स्लाइड्स आल्सो यू विल गेट. सो व्हाट आई हैव डन इज, जैसे कल वाली स्लाइड में आई हैव रिटन सम बेसिक एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ द आंसर. यहाँ पे मैंने लिखा, आई हैव रिटन डाउन द मेन पार्ट्स ऑफ द आंसर फॉर यू, सो यू कैन रेफर टू दीज थिंग्स. तो रादर देन राइटिंग अबाउट, सुनो, यहाँ पे तुम्हारे लिए आंसर लिखा हुआ है, स्लाइड से देख लेना जो आंसर है. आई हैव रिटन ऑल दीस थिंग्स फॉर यू. What are the key ethical issues? If you identified the main issue of the case, which is basically unlawful exercise of power by the person, if you identify that, you write that in introduction part, and then misuse of authority for apparently good intention. This is the case all about. Then 3 questions: ethical issues, evaluation of behavior, and then reaction to the situation. There must be clear subheadings. Ethical issues ये हैं, A part, write this subheading, identify the issues, evaluation of managers behavior from ethical point of view, बात करते हैं इसके बारे में, clear subheading and reaction to the situation, write subheading and write down this. Ethical issues. Ethical issues क्या होते हैं? देखो यहाँ तो मैंने लिख दिए हैं, तुम कैसे एग्जाम में लिखोगे? What are ethical issues? Think of various values that you have studied. अब पिछले 4 घंटे में 3 घंटे में जो मैम ने और सर ने तुमको बताया है, कई सारी वैल्यूज के बारे में बात करी होंगी. वो वैल्यूज बेसिकली क्या है? एथिकल इश्यूज हैं. याद मत करो कि एथिकल इश्यूज की कोई लिस्ट है विच यू हैव टू राइट डाउन. सिंपली, इज देयर एनी कंसर्न विद एन आइडिया ऑफ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी? हाउ डू यू एक्सरसाइज योर पावर? हाउ डू यू एक्सरसाइज डिस्क्रेशन? does your work ethic reflect honesty, integrity? All these are what? These are all ethical issues involved. In any case, all ethical issues will focus around these things. If you have command over that list of values जो मैम ने और सर ने आपको बताई हैं, अगर आपके पास वो values के ऊपर command है, तब आप easily उन values में से चुन लोगे. You will be able to identify that what of those values are applicable in this particular case. जैसे इस केस में क्या courage एक ethical issue है? यहाँ पे कोई करेज की बात थोड़ी ना है कि आपने कुछ करेजियस डिसीजन लेना है, या परसीवरेंस, फॉर्टिट्यूड, इन चीजों की बात नहीं हो रही है. यहाँ पे लीडरशिप की बात हो सकती है, यहाँ पे अथॉरिटी की, यहाँ पे एक्सरसाइज ऑफ अथॉरिटी की बात हो सकती है, डिस्क्रेशनरी पावर की बात हो सकती है, ऑब्जेक्टिविटी की बात हो सकती है, एम्पैथी की बात हो सकती है, दैट मैनेजर लेट्स से हैड एम्पैथेटिक एटीट्यूड टुवर्ड्स द पर्सन, हेंस डिड दैट थिंग. तो ये सब एथिकल इश्यूज यहाँ पे इन्वॉल्व हैं. Again, maturity. If you go towards कि भैया you have remembered that list of values, और वहां से आप हर केस में सेम सेट ऑफ वैल्यूज लिख रहे हो. You have remembered Nolan's values. Nolan's value मालूम है? सिविल सर्विसेज की वैल्यूज, एक नोलान कमेटी है यूके में, उन्होंने कुछ वैल्यूज बताई, ऑनेस्टी, इंटीग्रिटी, लीडरशिप, ऑब्जेक्टिविटी, कुछ वैल्यूज हैं. इफ यू रिमेंबर दैट लिस्ट एंड देन इन ईच क्वेश्चन यू आर राइटिंग दोज एज एथिकल इश्यूज, दैट्स नॉट गोइंग टू हेल्प यू. Identify that what are the values relevant to this particular case. For example, in this case, what would be the value? There is no policy, absence of policy with respect to use of dormant account, funds in dormant account. Breach of trust, you have been given trust as in your responsibility, public trust, and you are breaching that trust. Misuse of authority, obviously baat hai. Extent of discretionary power, I have some dormant account lying in my area of jurisdiction, lying in my possession, and can I use money in that account? I'm exercising discretion there, exercise of discretionary power. Accountability in exercise of power. How can I exercise power without consequence? How can I exercise power, this discretionary power, in this illegal manner without consequences? That is accountability. क्योंकि accountability नहीं है, इसीलिए मैं उसको exercise नहीं कर सकता हूँ. Anybody else wants to leave? बीच में वो उठ के जाना जब मैं सवाल डिस्कस कर रहा हूँ, तो ऐसे बदतमीजों की तरह. Anybody else wants to leave? If you want to leave, when I'm done with discussing a question, then you are free to leave, right? ऐसे बीच में उठ के जाया करो. It disturbs me and the class as well. Fine? Okay. Accountability in exercise of power. Because there is no accountability, nobody to hold me accountable, therefore I am able to violate such norms of rightful exercise of power, because there is no accountability. Responsibility to act in face of exigent circumstances. Somebody's father is dying, my office colleagues or my junior's father is dying, how can I help? So I think that I have some responsibility, how should I act in those exigent circumstances? So these are some ethical issues that you identify in this particular case. सबको आया समझ में क्या है? If you identify the case well, first part जैसे मैंने बोला, अगर आप केस को करेक्टली आइडेंटिफाई कर लेते हो तब बाकी का पार्ट अपने आप सारा का सारा फ्लो हो जाएगा. These are the ethical issues involved in this particular case. All right, clear? Okay, next question, question number B was analyze the manager's behavior from an ethical point of view, not from a legal point of view, from an ethical point of view. What is the difference between legal analysis and ethical analysis? Now, briefly about dormant account. Dormant account क्या होता है? नाम से भी समझ में आ रहा होगा क्या होगा dormant account? Inoperative for a long time. Simply, अगर देखो RBI की technical norms हैं कि when will an account be classified as a dormant account? So there is something called as inactive account. If there is no transaction for 1 year, then it is for 3 years some transaction, some 3 years it remains inactive, तो उसकी कुछ और classification हो जाती है. फिर उसके बाद next 7 साल का period आता है. That means total 10 year period. 1 year, 3 years and 10 years. 10 साल तक अगर कोई भी transaction नहीं हुई है तो उसको हम dormant declare कर, RBI dormant declare कर देता है. What happens to funds in a dormant account? ये मैं आपको information दे रहा हूँ. This information is not necessary to answer this question, but if you know this, it would be better for you. Then you can answer, let's say, from the point of view of an expert. An account is declared inoperative and then after some time dormant. When an account is declared inoperative, then the bank tries to find out who does this account belong to. लेकिन वहां पे बैंक आपको कांटेक्ट नहीं करेगा. कांटेक्ट क्यों नहीं करेगा? क्योंकि अगर कांटेक्ट करेगा तो किसी को पता चल सकता है कि ये अकाउंट इनऑपरेटिव है, तो फिर कोई मिसअप्रोप्रिएट कर सकता है उन फंड्स को. आपका अकाउंट था और आप let's say you are untraceable, you have been kidnapped somewhere, let's say, and somebody gets to know कि भैया आपका कोई अकाउंट बैंक में चल रहा है, तो then that person may misappropriate money from that particular account. So therefore bank will not contact you, but bank will still try to trace you. If for 10 years the account remains inoperative, तो उसके बाद उस अकाउंट का पैसा एक something called as investor education fund में चला जाता है. RBI का एक investor education fund है, basically फाइनेंशियल एजुकेशन का एक इनिशिएटिव है, उसके अंदर वो पैसा चला जाता है 10 साल तक अगर वो पैसा अनक्लेम्ड है तो. Even after that, if somebody comes up and rises and say that yes, this is my account after some time, then the bank will have to return that money कि यहाँ आपका अकाउंट था 10 साल तक आपने ऑपरेट नहीं किया तो क्या हो गया, but yes, now you are coming back, you are the legal person or the legal nominee of that account, then you can get that money back. लेकिन हाँ 10 साल के बाद उसको इन्वेस्टर एजुकेशन फंड में डाल देते हैं. सबको समझ में आया क्या है पॉलिसी? A bank manager, does he or she have the authority to use that money? You don't have that authority. If you are using it, it is an illegal task. ये fraud के equivalent है. मैं बैंक मैनेजर नहीं हूं, अगर मैं आपके अकाउंट से आपकी बिना परमिशन के पैसा निकाल दे रहा हूं, आपके सिग्नेचर फोर्ज करके निकाल दे रहा हूं, fraudulent activity on my part. You are bank manager, you don't need to forge the signature, लेकिन आपके पास क्योंकि कंप्यूटर का एक्सेस है, you can still withdraw money from some person's account or transfer money from that account. Even though you are not forging the signature, still the activity that you are doing is a fraudulent activity. तो आप फिर भी तब भी आप fraud कर रहे हो. That means if the bank manager is misappropriating or diverting this money, it is equivalent to fraud. Fraud मतलब illegal activity, corruption का part है, criminal activity है ये. There is definitely going to be legal consequences upon the bank manager. Is this clear to everybody? Okay. Question is evaluation of behavior of the bank manager from an ethical point of view, not from legal point of view. That means you can't simply write in your answer that bank manager's activity was illegal and hence unethical. सवाल में जब पूछा है ethical से evaluate करना है तो फिर आपको कुछ ना कुछ ethics वाले element यहाँ पे लिखना ही पड़ेगा. Now how do you evaluate? If some act has been done, कुछ हो गया है, you are not party to that act, you are a third party observing that act. How do you say, how do you comment that whether it was ethical or unethical, whether bank manager's actions are ethical or unethical? One way is you simply do a legal analysis कि lawful है तो ethical है, lawful नहीं है तो unethical है. लेकिन law and ethics का relationship पता ही होगा आपको. It is not always one to one. Something might be legal but unethical, something might be illegal but still ethical. तो ऐसा हो सकता है. You have to evaluate manager's actions with respect to ethics. How do you evaluate that? Then you have to write down some principles there. that for me some action would be ethical if it conforms to, let's say, the following principles. अगर ये principles को follow कर रही है तो ethical है, otherwise unethical act है. यहाँ पे you can use some standard frameworks. Let's say you can use Kantian or utilitarian framework. You can say, for example, under the utilitarian framework, an act is considered as ethical if it produces greatest good for greatest number of people. Bank manager has misappropriated funds from an inoperative or a dormant account. Does it produce good for greatest number of people? Probably it does not. It produces good for just one person who got the benefit from that account. But it leads to breach of trust of millions of depositors of that bank. It is bank means trusteeship. It leads to loss of trust that millions of people have in the banking system. As a result of that, people will stop depositing money in the banks because they think that managers can appropriate or misappropriate their money on their own whims. Hence, the economy might collapse because of that. So therefore, this act is not a utilitarian act. एक पर्सन का बेनिफिट है जिसको फायदा मिल रहा है, जिसको मिसअप्रोप्रिएशन से फायदा मिल रहा है, लेकिन पूरी इकोनॉमी का नुकसान है. तो अब आप इसको एथिकल एंगल से इवैल्यूएट कर रहे हो. एग्जामिनर ये चाहता है इवैल्यूएशन आंसर में. एग्जामिनर ये नहीं चाहता कि आप एक लाइन लिख दो कि बैंक मैनेजर्स एक्ट वर इलीगल बिकॉज ही इज मिसअप्रोप्रिएटिंग दीस फंड्स, देयरफॉर अनएथिकल. ये नहीं चाहता है. एग्जामिनर वांट्स यू टू राइट सम प्रिंसिपल्स इन योर आंसर, इवैल्यूएट द एक्शन ऑन दोज एथिकल प्रिंसिपल्स. तो जैसे आपने यूटिलिटेरियन का एग्जांपल लिया कि यूटिलिटेरियन पर्सपेक्टिव से ये एक्ट अनएथिकल एक्ट है. दिस इज व्हाट यू हैव टू राइट इन दिस पार्ट. और यू कैन यूज द कांशियन फ्रेमवर्क. इमैनुअल कांत ने क्या बोला कि कौन सी एक्ट एथिकल कब होगी. अब आई कांट टीच दिस इन दिस सेशन. आई विल अज्यूम, थोड़ा सा बताऊंगा ब्रीफली क्या है. इफ यू डोंट नो, प्लीज रेफर टू सम मटीरियल. इफ यू आर स्टूडेंट ऑफ विजन IAS, देन यू हैव द मटीरियल विद यू. एथिक्स का मटीरियल है, वहां से पढ़ लेना. अगर विजन के स्टूडेंट नहीं हो तो फोटोकॉपी दुकान पे मिलता है, वहां से मटीरियल खरीद लेना. ठीक है, कोई भी मटीरियल खरीदना, वहां पे आई एम श्योर कांशियन अप्रोच के ऊपर लिखा होगा दैट व्हाट इज कांशियन अप्रोच, दैट इज व्हाट अकॉर्डिंग टू इमैनुअल कांत इज एथिकल, व्हाट इज अनएथिकल. तो पढ़ लेना उस चीज को. कांत बेसिकली सेज टू थिंग्स. An act will be considered as ethical if, one, it can be universalized. Act पे से सारा context हटा दो और फिर देखो कि क्या उसको universalize कर सकते हैं कि नहीं. Meaning, can it be considered as ethical in all context, as in without any context? I stole because my child was unwell. Ethical or unethical? Remove the context that my child is unwell. The fact is, I stole. अब क्या स्टीलिंग वाली एक्ट को हम यूनिवर्सलाइज कर सकते हैं? अगर स्टीलिंग यूनिवर्सलाइज हो जाएगी तो देन सोसाइटी के अंदर क्योस होगा, ट्रस्ट का लॉस हो जाएगा, लोग एक दूसरे को मार देंगे. हेंस ये एक्ट यूनिवर्सलाइजेबल नहीं है. हेंस कांत विल से इट इज अ अनएथिकल एक्ट. व्हाई? बिकॉज इट इज नॉट यूनिवर्सलाइजेबल. बैंक मैनेजर मिसअप्रोप्रिएट फंड्स बिकॉज अ कलीग्स फादर वाज अनवेल. रिमूव द कॉन्टेक्स्ट. मिसअप्रोप्रिएट फंड क्या ये यूनिवर्सलाइजेबल है? नहीं. क्यों? क्योंकि इट इज कॉजिंग ब्रीच ऑफ ट्रस्ट ऑफ पीपल इन द बैंकिंग सिस्टम. It is an act which shows lack of accountability in exercise of power, lack of responsibility in amongst those who have been given power by the people. Hence, this act can't be universalized. It leads to chaos in the society, breach of trust or loss of trust in the society. Hence, this is an unethical act. तो कांशियन फ्रेमवर्क इस्तेमाल कर लो. सेकेंड प्रिंसिपल जो कांत यूज करते हैं वो बोलते हैं कि क्या कोई भी एक्ट, फर्स्ट इज यूनिवर्सलाइजेबिलिटी ऑफ दैट एक्ट, सेकंड इज इफ एन एक्ट हैज एन ह्यूमन एलिमेंट इन इट, इज ह्यूमैनिटी इन दैट एक्ट बीइंग यूज्ड एज अ मींस और एज एन एंड इन इटसेल्फ. कोई भी ह्यूमन एलिमेंट अगर वहां पे है तो क्या आप किसी पर्सन को अपना कुछ पर्सनल सेल्फिश गोल अचीव करने के लिए इस्तेमाल कर रहे हो, या फिर आप उसको हेल्प इसीलिए कर रहे हो क्योंकि द पर्सन इज अ ह्यूमन बीइंग. यू आर हेल्पिंग फॉर हेल्प्स सेक, यू आर नॉट हेल्पिंग फॉर योर ओन सेक. मीन्स वर्सेस एंड समझ में आ रहा है क्या है? मीन्स वर्सेस एंड्स. ह्यूमैनिटी फॉर ह्यूमैनिटीज सेक और ह्यूमैनिटी फॉर योर सेल्फिश मीन्स सेक. इफ ह्यूमैनिटी इज बीइंग ट्रीटेड एज एन एंड इन इटसेल्फ, then it is an ethical act. If it is treated as a means to achieve your selfish ends, then it is a unethical act. That is second principle of Kant. तो Kant दो principle बोलते हैं. The point is that in this second part of the question, when you write evaluation of behavior of bank manager from ethical point of view, then you have to write down these principles. यहाँ पे हमको pros and cons नहीं लिखने हैं कि बैंक मैनेजर की एक्ट की क्या मेरिट है क्या डिमेरिट है. ये नहीं लिखना है. हमको ये लिखना है कि उसका असेसमेंट कैसे करेंगे कि क्या ये एथिकल एक्ट थी या नहीं थी. उसके लिए we'll use some standard framework, for example utilitarian or Kantian, or you simply write, if you don't know utilitarian Kantian, you simply write that we'll use the means end framework for this. Do wrong means justify good ends? They don't. Wrong means don't justify good end, because many of the corrupt tasks, many of wars, many of immoral tasks have been done presumably for right ends but using wrong means. Countries think that it is their right to pursue their national interest, but countries use wrong means to achieve their national interest, which leads to wars amongst countries. तो means end paradigm इस्तेमाल कर लो, वो तो आसान है. Utilitarian नहीं पता, Kantian नहीं पता, means end तो सुना ही होगा सबने. तुम गांधी जी का इस्तेमाल कर लो, बिल्कुल इस्तेमाल कर सकते हो. हाँ, means बिल्कुल, गांधी says right means, sorry, wrong means never justify good ends. So use any set of principles. That is what the examiner want. When they are explicitly writing that, evaluate the behavior of manager from ethical point of view. This is what they want from you. Right? Write principles and then write down. Third, reaction to this situation. कि भाई आप क्या react करोगे? अब आप कौन हो इस situation के अंदर? Who are you? You are working as an executive in this nationalized bank. आपका काम क्या है? क्या काम है बताओ जरा, आप क्या करोगे? सीनियर तो बैंक मैनेजर स्वयं है यहां पे. देखो हर जगह, हाँ बोलो. गुड, आई एम प्राउड दैट यू हैव लर्न फ्रॉम अवर क्लासेस. चलो, हर जगह सीनियर को कंप्लेंट करने की आवश्यकता नहीं है. हर केस का आंसर कि व्हाट शुड यू डू is not that I will go to seniors, I will go to media, I will go to anti-corruption cell. हर सवाल का आंसर ये नहीं होता है कि कुछ चीज गलत है इसलिए चलो दुनिया हिला देते हैं. No. Where did you get this information? Hearsay. From the person who said that yes, I've been helped in this particular manner. Do you have any evidence for that? You don't have any evidence. So what would be your reaction? Your reaction would be to advise your friend. Your reaction in this case will not be to go and complain to somebody. Your action would be to advise your friend that this is an illegal task done by the manager. Please ask the manager to convert this into a loan. अपनी पावर के अनुसार, जो भी मैनेजर की पावर है, आपको लोन, जब आप पैसा वापस कर, यू आर रिटर्निंग मनी, लिखा है ना, रिटर्निंग मनी ऑन टाइम. You're returning money on time, please ask the manager to convert this into loan according to the power, sanctioning power that he or she has. But this is an illegal task which will definitely be caught in the bank's audits. The banking system is such, RBI's regulations are such that any आप सोचो ना कि बैंक मैनेजर अगर डोरमेंट अकाउंट के फंड्स मिसयूज कर सकता है तो किसी भी अकाउंट के मिसयूज नहीं कर सकता है क्या कोई पर्सन? That means bank manager have that power. So don't you think that RBI's regulations would be such that they prevent any such misuse of power? So definitely this is going to get caught, and you, the colleague, you have no role to play here. You write down that such misappropriation is definitely going, लिखो अपने आंसर में, is definitely going to caught in the audit of the bank. I will advise my friend to go and convert this amount into a loan based on sanctioning power of the manager or some higher authority. By doing this, I would have given her correct and legal advice. At the same time, I must recognize that there is no evidence, there is no unlawful evidence है. We'll talk about evidence वाला एक और आगे सवाल है, evidence वाला part, वहाँ पे और अच्छे से बताऊंगा evidence वाली चीज को, लेकिन ना यहाँ पे भी इस चीज को लिखना है हमको. This is not an evidence admissible in court कि भाई जो है सब किसी ने मेरे को बताया कि ऐसा हुआ है और मैं कोर्ट चला गया, वहाँ पे पता चला मेरे ऊपर इल्जाम लग गया कुछ ना कुछ. This is only hearsay. This is something that is no standing in the court of law. So you don't have to do anything here कि मैं किसी की complaint कर दूं जाके. At best, what your reaction would be that I would express, let's say, shock, and I would advise my friend to get this converted into a loan based on the sanctioning power of the manager. I would advise them that this is an illegal act on their part, which is definitely going to be caught in the audit. Hence, it is pertinent that they correct any kind of wrongdoing today rather than wait for a future. This is what your reaction should be in this case. Is this clear to everybody? सबको समझ में आया कैसे हमने आंसर लिखना है? Clear है? आगे बढ़े, बोलो. आपका काम क्रॉस, आप क्या लॉयर हो या फिर आप इन्वेस्टिगेटिंग ऑफिसर हो? नहीं, You are merely you will be called as a witness when audit department catches this, कि क्या आपको पता है कि ऐसा कुछ हुआ था, आपको विटनेस कितना बुलाया जाएगा और कुछ नहीं. ठीक है. तो अगेन इस चीज से बचो कि हर जगह हम ज्ञान दे, एडवाइस दें, इस चीज से बचो. ठीक है. ओके, नेक्स्ट आगे बढ़ते हैं. हाँ जी बोलो. यूटिलिटेरियन मीन्स एंड, हाँ नहीं नहीं बिल्कुल नहीं, बिल्कुल नहीं. नो नो नो, यू डोंट हैव टू राइट ऑल थ्री, मीन्स एंड और कांशियन और यूटिलिटेरियन. यू डोंट हैव टू राइट ऑल थ्री. Choose anyone. This is what the examiner want, that you choose anyone and you analyze on the basis of that. This is what the examiner want, not nothing more than that. फिर तो यार ऐसे लिखा जाएगा पूरा, फिर पेज सारे भर जाएंगे. ठीक है, क्लियर. चलो आगे बढ़ते हैं, नेक्स्ट सवाल करते हैं. एक्शन नहीं यार, क्योंकि एक्शन लेने के लिए आपके पास पावर भी तो होनी चाहिए एक्शन लेने की. केस स्टडी का बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट ये भी होता है कि यू रियलाइज व्हाट पावर यू हैव. You are a IPS officer. Can you impose section 144? कौन impose करता है section 144? section 144 किस चीज का है? कर्फ्यू लगाते हैं जो है ना, अनलॉफुल असेंबली वाला जो है, वो डीएम का पावर है. दिस इज नॉट विसल ब्लोइंग. कब कर, अगेन विसल ब्लोइंग, चलो अच्छा हो तुमने नाम ले लिया विसल ब्लोइंग. विसल ब्लोइंग कब करते हैं? जब आपके पास प्रूफ हो. हियर से पे, एलिगेशंस पे विसल ब्लोइंग थोड़ी ना करते हैं कि मेरे ख्याल से एग्जाम मेरे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के अंदर ऐसा हो रहा है, ऐसे नहीं करना. ठीक है. चलो नेक्स्ट सवाल करते हैं. A landslide occurred in the middle of night on 20th July 2013 in a remote mountain hamlet approximately 60 kilometers from Uttarkashi. Landslide occurred. The landslide was caused by torrential rain and has resulted in large scale destruction of property and life. You as a district magistrate of the area have rushed to the spot with a team of doctors, NGOs, media and police along with numerous staff to oversee the rescue operations. सबको समझ में आ गया? ये बेस समझ में आया क्या है? तो लैंडस्लाइड हुई है, आप डिस्ट्रिक्ट मजिस्ट्रेट हो of the area and you have rushed to the spot with a team of doctors, NGOs, media and police along with numerous support staff to oversee rescue operations. A man came running to you with a request for urgent medical help for his pregnant wife who is in labor and is losing blood. You directed your medical team to examine his wife. They return and convey to you that this woman needs blood transfusion immediately. Upon inquiry, you come to know that a few blood collection bags and blood group test kits are available in the ambulance accompanying your team. Few of your team members have already volunteered to donate blood. Being a physician who has graduated from AIMS, you know that blood for transfusion needs to be procured only through recognized blood bank. This is the most important line here. Being a physician who has graduated from AIMS, you know that blood for transfusion needs to be procured only through a recognized blood bank. Your team members are divided on this issue. Some favor transfusion while some others oppose it. The doctors in the team are ready to facilitate delivery provided they are not penalized for transfusion. Now you are in a dilemma. Your professional training emphasizes on prioritizing service to humanity and saving lives of individuals. What are the ethical issues involved in this case? Evaluate the options available to you being district magistrate of the area. Case clear हुआ सबको क्या है? Again, we have to identify that what is the case about. The case is not about disaster management. The case is not about disaster preparedness. The case is also not completely about, let's say, how do you act in a disaster situation. The case is actually about how do you act in some exigent circumstance here where rules versus emergency requirement may be in conflict. Rules say, you know that blood for transfusion needs to be procured only through a recognized blood bank. अब यहाँ पे blood bank कहाँ से लाओगे? You know that this has to be procured from that. Some of your team members are in favor, others are against transfusion. But you also know that if blood is not provided immediately, the person has a high risk of dying, high risk, low chance of survival. What would you do in this particular case? Rules versus those rules acting as an impediment to act in an emergency situation. ये basically case है यहाँ पे. There exist rules बट रूल्स आर फॉर अ सर्टेन पर्पस. अगर आप हर जगह ब्लड ऐसे ही ट्रांसफ्यूज करने लोगे तो देयर इज गोइंग टू बी lot of diseases that will spread because of this. So rules are made for a reason, but at the same time these rules might many times prevent from right thing taking place, meaning let's say saving life of a particular person who needs immediate transfusion. Case सबको clear हुआ है क्या है? Case क्या है? What are the ethical issues involved in this case? Evaluate options available to you being district magistrate of this area. Introduction में कैसे लिखेंगे हम? Whenever you come across this thing, मेरे को देखो, उधर पीछे नहीं, इधर देखो. Whenever you come across such situations where there exist rules and those rules may seem like an impediment to act in an emergency situation, the key issue that is there is accountability. अगर आपको रूल वायलेट करना है, रूल एग्जिस्ट करता है, किसी पर्पस के लिए एग्जिस्ट करता है. If you have to violate a rule, it must be done with accountability, exigent circumstances. You have to search somebody's house. You are a police officer, you have to search somebody's house. Can you go and search without a warrant? No, you can't search without a warrant. Now, in CRPC, it is a requirement that you need a warrant to search somebody's house. But if there are some exigent circumstances, इस रूल के नीचे एक exception of exigent circumstances भी दिया होगा. For example, there was a crime that has been committed, let's say murder. Murder weapon was found. The person having the knowledge of that murder weapon has gone missing for last 3 days. It is a holiday, and despite that the person is not at his home, has not repeatedly answered your calls. That means now you have a reason to believe that an important piece of evidence might be lost or an important witness might be lost in this investigation. Exigent circumstances need exigent measures. आप अब उस पर्सन के घर जाओगे, सर्च करोगे विदाउट वारंट. यू कैन डू दैट विदाउट वारंट. एक्सिजेंट सर्कमस्टांसेस. लेकिन इंपॉर्टेंट क्या है, हम यहां पे पहले स्पेसिफाई करें कि क्या एक्सिजेंट सर्कमस्टांस था. जो मैंने पूरी कहानी बताई है, मर्डर टुक प्लेस, मर्डर वेपन गॉन मिसिंग, द पर्सन विद नॉलेज ऑफ मर्डर वेपन इज नॉट आंसरिंग कॉल, नॉट एट हिज होम डिस्पाइट इट बीइंग अ हॉलिडे. नाउ यू हैव अ रीजन टू बिलीव दैट अ क्रिटिकल पीस ऑफ एविडेंस माइट बी लॉस्ट. Therefore, as an officer, you have this power to act in these exigent circumstances by violating the said rule of requirement of a warrant. तो ये है अकाउंटेबिलिटी. अकाउंटेबिलिटी ये नहीं है कि मैं पुलिस ऑफिसर हूं और मैं किसी भी चीज को इमरजेंसी बोल के आपके घर पे जाऊं और छापा मार दूं. चलो आज तुमको घर से उठा लेते हैं क्योंकि इमरजेंसी मेरे को लग रही थी कि तुम भाग जाओगे. वो एक्सिजेंट सर्कमस्टांस नहीं है. I must be able to explain what were the circumstances in which I acted. So whenever you come across, अब example समझ में आया क्या है? Whenever you come across such cases where there might be a rule which is mentioned in this case, for example, and the rule prevents you from acting in a manner that is emergently required in a case, then you must be able to justify that why did you use your discretionary power to, let's say, overpower that rule. This is emergency power that you have. ये है accountability. Accountability is when you take responsibility of your actions. ब्लड ट्रांसफ्यूजन नहीं किया, अब वो तो रूल है, वो तो आपको वैसा ऐड करना, वैसा तो एक्ट करना ही है आपको. वहां पे अकाउंटेबिलिटी का क्या पर्पस? अकाउंटेबिलिटी किस चीज, व्हाई इज देयर अकाउंटेबिलिटी, व्हेन, इन विच केस विल यू नीड अकाउंटेबिलिटी? When these emergency situations are there, that is when you need accountability. To act according to law. Law says you must submit me 50 documents. But if you don't submit 50 documents, somebody is going to die. Somebody is going to be deprived of, let's say, the food grains that have to be allocated to you. Law says that food have to be allocated to you only when you submit your Aadhaar card. You don't have an Aadhaar card, you are an agricultural labor, you don't have proper fingerprints, how will I allocate food to you? Then in that case, I have a good enough reason to allocate food grains to you. लेकिन रूल है तो मेरे को फिर आपका आधार कार्ड बनाना भी पड़ेगा कि I have to expedite your आधार कार्ड, जिससे अगली बार से ऐसे प्रॉब्लम नहीं आए. Accountability is to act in such situations, emergency situations. इसलिए accountability है. लॉ के साथ कंप्लाई करना तो फिर कई बार मैक्सिमम टाइम क्या होता है कि law becomes a reason for you to not act in a manner, or not act in a situation. Because you have to act, you must act with accountability. This is what is accountability. So why are your other team members scared? Why are they not acting? Some support, some do not support. Why do some people say that no, हमको ट्रांसफ्यूजन नहीं करना चाहिए? Because they fear. क्या लिखा है डॉक्टर्स ने? They want they are ready to facilitate delivery provided they are not penalized for transfusion. I transfuse the blood because the woman is losing blood rapidly. I perform the delivery. Later on, she dies. And it was found that she died because of sepsis. Sepsis क्या होता है? Blood में जो infection होता है उसको sepsis बोलते हैं. She died because of infection in blood. तो जिम्मेदारी किसकी आ जाएगी? डॉक्टर की जिम्मेदारी आ जाएगी. तो अब मैं को वहां पे फिर कोई ना कोई मेरे साथ खड़ा होना चाहिए ना, वही इमरजेंसी सिचुएशन थी इसीलिए मैंने ट्रांसफ्यूजन किया. अगर हमारे पास ब्लड बैंक वाला ब्लड होता तो हम ऑब्वियसली वही देते. रिलेटिव्स मेरे को मारने आ गए उसके बाद कि आपने ब्लड अच्छा सही ब्लड ट्रांसफ्यूजन नहीं किया है आपने, यू डिड नॉट टेक प्रॉपर केयर. Because I will be held accountable, hence my hands are pulling back to not act. Accountability. समझ में आया क्या है accountability? In this situation you need accountability. For a person who is responsible to take decisions, the district collector, you require leadership. I must be able to lead my team. I must be able to assure them that please act in what is the right way. Act lawfully, act with accountability. This is how you have to act in this case. अब मैंने तुमको इतना ज्ञान दे दिया इस चीज के ऊपर, अब इंट्रोडक्शन के अंदर ये सब ज्ञान नहीं लिखोगे, बट हाँ इंट्रोडक्शन के अंदर ये पार्ट जरूर लिखोगे कि भाई केस अल्टीमेटली है किस चीज का. द केस इज अबाउट accountability and leadership. Being accountable for decisions that you take in exigent circumstances. This is the case about. What the case is about. You write this thing, examiner knows that you have understood the dilemma of this case. This case is about acting with accountability in emergency situations. Accountability for actions in emergency situation. It may become a hindrance to the right thing. Is this clear? Is it a bona fide mistake? समझते हो? समझ में आ गया होगा अब क्या है बोनाफाइड मिस्टेक. मैंने ब्लड ट्रांसफ्यूजन किया लेकिन उसके कारण हो सकता है कुछ इंफेक्शन चला गया हो एंड हेंस द पर्सन डाइड. आई डिड नॉट इंटेंड टू ट्रांसफ्यूज हर विद इन्फेक्टेड ब्लड. आई डिड what all I could in the limited resources and time that I had at that point. I did whatever I could. I took the necessary precautions. I took the necessary approvals from my seniors, doctors, the family members. I took all those necessary approvals. Consent from family members. I did my best, but still I could not save the patient. It is a bona fide mistake on my part. मैंने कुछ जान के गलत एक्ट नहीं किया है, लेकिन हाँ कुछ हो गया जो कि शायद मेरे हाथ में नहीं था. Hence, I should not be penalized for that thing. Bona fide mistake. So write this part in your introduction. Accountability to act in emergency circumstances. Responsibility of leaders to take responsibility, to take accountability in such situations. ये केस इस चीज का है. एथिकल इश्यूज क्या है यहाँ पे? लीडरशिप सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट एथिकल इशू है. आर यू एबल टू टेक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, डिमॉन्स्ट्रेट लीडरशिप, और डू यू डेवलप कोल्ड फीट? एक जान जा रही है और आप वहां पे जान बचाने के चक्कर में हमारे बोले नहीं, रूल ये बोलता है कि ब्लड बैंक से लेके आओ, तो जाओ ब्लड बैंक से लेके आओ. आपने अपने आप तो फिर बिल्कुल परफेक्ट एक आदर्श बालक की तरह एक्ट किया है आपने, बट in all probability a life is going to be lost in that case. Leadership means taking responsibility, acting in such situation. That is what leadership is. Leadership able to take decision, decide and take decision when subordinates differ, because there are different rules that might come into conflict. Recognition of challenges. इस तरीके से आप इस situation में act करोगे, that you decide that yes, whether I'm going to transfuse blood or not, you recognize what challenges can be there. For example, there is a high degree of probability that maybe the person still dies because she has already lost blood, she is already in an emergency situation. Maybe she still dies. Maybe the person who gives blood, जब ब्लड देते हैं तो फिर आपसे पूछा जाता है कि भाई आपने लास्ट 3 दिन के अंदर स्मोक तो नहीं किया है, अल्कोहल तो नहीं कंज्यूम किया है, कोई ड्रग्स वगैरह तो नहीं लिए हैं आपने, या फिर किसी मेडिसिन पे तो नहीं हो. Then based on that, then they take your blood. If somebody is willing to give blood, आपने बोला, कुछ टीम मेंबर्स तैयार हो गए that yes I am willing to give blood, you take on their face value कि भैया मैंने कुछ नहीं किया है, I have not let's say consumed alcohol or not smoked in last 3 days. But maybe the person let's say forgot, genuine mistake, maybe the person forgot, हो सकता है उसने जान के झूठ बोला या फिर अनजाने में झूठ बोल दिया हो, maybe it leads to some kind of reaction in the blood and hence the person is not able to survive. So recognize that these are the possibilities in future, that recognize that to act in this situation, these are the challenges that I might face. Take consent of the family in advance. Make sure that all the proper medical procedures that can be followed are followed in this particular situation. तो ये सब हमको challenges recognize करने. That is an ethical issue in this case. Consent, I have to take consent, that whether the value of this consent that family members are giving to me. Power to override rule. There exists a rule that blood has to be procured from blood bank only. Do I have the power in this exigent circumstances that can I overrule this rule? Can I overrule a particular, override a particular rule? Use of expert knowledge. दिया है भाई, I'm an AIMS graduate myself. How can I use my expert knowledge? Basic training अगर मेरे पास है, that means I can take better decisions then. So these are ethical issues involved in this particular case. Is it clear? तो को समझना है क्या ethical issues हैं? Relevant to the case. हमको अगर केस को करेक्टली आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे तभी हम करेक्ट एथिकल इश्यूज आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हैं. नेक्स्ट, इवैल्यूएशन ऑफ अवेलेबल ऑप्शंस. देखो, जब हम अवेलेबल ऑप्शंस की बात करते हैं, now this is going to come in other questions also. Please take this as a note. Please understand this thing. Whenever the question asks you to write down the available options, कि क्या क्या ऑप्शंस हैं आपके पास, ऐसा नहीं करना या ऐसा मत सोचना कि ज्यादा ऑप्शंस लिखेंगे तो ज्यादा मार्क्स मिलेंगे, ऐसा बिल्कुल नहीं है. डोंट राइट सच ऑप्शंस जिनको पढ़ते ही एग्जामिनर रिजेक्ट कर देगा, कि ऐसे तो बिल्कुल भी नहीं करोगे. प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड दिस बायस. इमेजिन करो कि आप किसी का आंसर पढ़ रहे हो और किसी ने इस आंसर में कुछ ऐसा ऑप्शन लिख दिया जिसको आप पढ़ते ही रिजेक्ट कर दो कि ये तो बिल्कुल नहीं करना चाहिए. Even though the person whose answer you are reading, even though the person has himself or herself rejected that option, but simply because the person has mentioned that option, you're not going to think that कि person का answer अच्छे quality का answer नहीं है. इस case में you have two options basically, two good options in which you can act. Arrange for emergency airlift but refuse the transfusion, or टेक नेसेसरी प्रिकॉशंस एंड अलाउ ट्रांसफ्यूजन. आपके पास ये ऑप्शंस हैं. अगर आपने यहां पे ये पहला ऑप्शन ये लिख दिया दैट आई विल, इंस्टेड ऑफ राइटिंग दिस, इफ यू राइट द फर्स्ट ऑप्शन दैट आई विल रिफ्यूज ट्रांसफ्यूजन बिकॉज इट इज अगेंस्ट द रूल्स. नाउ दिस इज एन ऑप्शन दैट कैन बी इजीली रिजेक्टेड इन द फर्स्ट इंस्टेंस ओनली. दैट मीन्स यू नो दैट द पर्सन इज गोइंग टू डाई एंड यू आर नॉट गोइंग टू डू एनीथिंग इन दैट केस. Don't write such options which can be ruled out in the first line, in the first instance itself. Don't write that option. इस तरीके से मत लिखना कि दिमाग में सोच लो या फिर बात करते करते कर लो कि भाई ऑप्शन तो दो ही हैं कि ट्रांसफ्यूजन अलाउ करेंगे, अलाउ नहीं करेंगे. ऐसे ऑप्शन नहीं लिखने हैं हमको आंसर में. ऑप्शंस मस्ट बी क्वालिटेटिव. फ्रेंड जोन वर्सेस अट्रैक्टिव. एग्जामिनर विल बी अट्रैक्टेड if you present the options to the examiner which are both viable. क्या पहला ऑप्शन वायबल नहीं है? पहला ऑप्शन पढ़ो, हमने क्या लिखा है? अरेंज फॉर, हम राइटिंग लैंग्वेज मैटर्स हियर. अरेंज फॉर इमरजेंसी एयरलिफ्ट बट रिफ्यूज ट्रांसफ्यूजन. नाउ इट इज अ परफेक्टली वायबल ऑप्शन, बट यू नो दैट चांसेस ऑफ डेथ आर मोर इन दिस केस. टाइमली हेल्प विल नॉट रीच. लेकिन अब यू आर नॉट सिंपली सेइंग दैट आई विल नॉट अलाउ ट्रांसफ्यूजन हियर. दिस इज एन ऑप्शन दैट रिफ्लेक्ट्स टू द एग्जामिनर दैट यू आर अ मैच्योर पर्सन. आप सिंपली कुछ ऑप्शन लिखने के लिए ऑप्शन नहीं लिख रहे हो, आप कुछ सोच समझ के ऑप्शन लिख रहे हो. सेकंड ऑप्शन, टेक नेसेसरी प्रिकॉशंस एंड अलाउ ट्रांसफ्यूजन. You're not simply writing that I will allow transfusion. You have to write this ahead. Take necessary precautions. For example, take consent. Make sure that information is correctly available. Make sure that there is no chance of any kind of blood infection being transfused. You're writing that I'm taking necessary precautions. Write in this option that, for example, I will record all the reasons. I will also, meanwhile, while the doctors perform this surgery or doctor perform this transfusion, I will ask my team members that they can give their own opinion that under what circumstances was the decision taken. Take accountability. किस तरीके से accountability लेंगे. तो ये हमारे पास options हैं यहाँ पे. इवैल्यूएट करना है, मतलब मेरिट डीमेरिट लिखनी होगी हमको इन आंसर्स लिख सकते हैं. आई थिंक नाउ बिकॉज आई हैव डिस्कस्ड एवरीथिंग पार्ट, यू कैन, आई एम श्योर यू कैन ऑल राइट मेरिट डीमेरिट ऑफ दीज ऑप्शंस. दिस इज व्हाट यू हैव टू राइट. What options should you pursue? It is up to you what you want to write, but I'm sure most of you should be choosing the option कि भाई जो है हम necessary precautions लेंगे and allow transfusion. अगर आप स्वयं एक डॉक्टर हो और आपकी ट्रेनिंग आपको कुछ स्पेशल इंफॉर्मेशन देती है, if there would be many doctors amongst you, if your training gives you some special information, you can write that also. For example, एक alternate है, there is something called as LR solution, lactated ringer solution एक होता है, which is given in case of emergency blood loss. जहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा blood loss होता है तो वहाँ पे हम ये LR solution provide करते हैं, lactated ringer solution. नई इन्फॉर्मेशन मिल गई, प्रीलिम्स जाकर तो मार्क कर दोगे. अब क्या है लैक्टेटेड रिंगर सॉल्यूशन? अब ये एक स्पेसिफिक नॉलेज है जो कि एक डॉक्टर को होती है, हम आम जनता को नहीं है. बट इफ यू राइट दिस कि आई विल प्रोवाइड फॉर लैक्टेटेड रिंगर सॉल्यूशन एंड बिकॉज इट कैन बी यूज इन इमरजेंसी ब्लड ट्रांसफ्यूजन, यू आर नॉट एड्रेसिंग द डायलेमा इन द केस. आपको सवाल में डायलेमा एड्रेस करने के लिए बोला गया कि बताओ ट्रांसफ्यूजन करोगे या नहीं करोगे. इफ यू smartly play it out, then you are not addressing the dilemma here. So write down that I am going to choose amongst 1 and 2, probably 2, and then write down as an alternate I will see that if there are other options available such as availability of lactated ringer solution that can be administered in case of, अगर मैं पहला ऑप्शन चूज कर रहा हूँ emergency airlift का, तब मैं उनको lactated ringer के साथ airlift करूँगा so that the need of blood transfusion gets delayed by some time. Then you can use this as an additional information, but core part would be to address these two things. Absolutely clear to everybody? कैसे आंसर लिखना है, क्लियर है? This is how we write case studies answers. Let's move on to the next case, third case. Question 9. At 9 p.m. on a Saturday evening, Rashika, a joint secretary, was still engrossed in her work in the office. Her husband Vikram is an executive in an MNC and frequently out of town in connection with his work. Their 2 children aged 5 and 3 are looked after by the domestic help. So Rashika ji हैं, वो joint secretary हैं और रात को 9 बजे she is engaged in her office work. Husband is an executive in MNC and he is also out of town in connection with his work frequently. They have 2 children aged 5 and 3, quite young, looked after by the domestic help. At 9:30, her superior, Mr. Suresh, calls her and asks her to prepare a detailed note on an important matter to be discussed in a meeting in the ministry. She realizes that she will have to work on Sunday to finish the additional task given by her superior. Clear हो गया case? She has been called at 9:30 p.m. to do some additional task given to her by the superior. Detailed note बनाना है. She reflects on how she had looked forward to this posting and had worked long hours for months to achieve it. She had kept the welfare of people uppermost in discharging her duty. She feels that she has not done enough justice to her family and she has not fulfilled her duties in discharging essential social obligations. Even as recently as last month, she had to leave her sick child in the nanny's care as she had to work in the office. Now she feels that she must draw a line beyond which her personal life should take precedence over her professional responsibilities. Clear है case? सबको समझ में आ रहा है? She thinks that there should be a reasonable limit to the work ethics such as punctuality, hard work, dedication to duty and selfless service. Discuss the ethical issues involved in this case. Briefly describe at least 4 laws that have been enacted by the government with respect to providing a healthy, safe and equitable working environment for women. Imagine you are in a similar situation. What suggestions would you make to mitigate such working conditions? Clear है case? समझने में तो बहुत आसान केस है, क्लियर हो गया है. इट इज बेसिकली केस अबाउट व्हाट? बताओ किस चीज का केस है? पर्सनल वर्सेस प्रोफेशनल, और बेटर एक्सप्रेस करो. वर्क लाइफ बैलेंस है ना. सी दिस इज नॉट प्रिसाइसली अ केस ऑन लेट्स से पेट्रियार्की or special responsibility that let's say women have in the family. This is not precisely that case. Certainly it has been written from the eyes of a woman, in the context of a woman. But certainly this is applicable to both men and women. This is basically a case of work-life balance. तो when you are writing the answer, देखो सवाल में पूछा गया बी पार्ट है 4 laws by the government with respect to providing healthy, safe, equitable working circumstances for women. You have to write down about special challenges that women face. वर्क लाइफ बैलेंस का केस है, लेकिन उसमें वर्क लाइफ बैलेंस में जो बैलेंस वाला पार्ट है वहां पे आप स्पेशल प्रॉब्लम्स, स्पेशल चैलेंजेस दैट वुमेन फेस उस एंगल से लिखना है. लेकिन इसका मतलब केस पेट्रियार्की का है, ये चीज नहीं है. केस तो वर्क लाइफ बैलेंस का ही है अल्टीमेटली. ये रिकॉग्नाइज डिफरेंस करना इंपॉर्टेंट है. बट अगेन ऑब्वियसली यू हैव टू राइट द आंसर from the perspective of a woman, meaning the challenges that particularly women face in maintaining that work-life balance part. Is this clear? The case itself is easy. I'm sure most of you would have thought about it. Most of you can write about it. Discuss the ethical issues involved in this case. She is a joint secretary. Joint secretary, yeah. That means she's in public life. As a civil servant, what do you expect civil servants to be? They are expected to be duty all time or not? A police officer, let's say, all time on duty, an IAS officer all time on duty. That means when you become a public servant, it is expected that you are going to dedicate, expected that you are going to dedicate yourself to public service or to national service 24/7. It is expected. Is it possible? Expectation है that you are expected to be attentive at work, available for work in any of the emergency situation. It is not possible to work 24/7 all the time. Expectation versus quote unquote reality. Such expectation, what do they lead to? They lead to many times they lead to imbalance of your work and personal life. How can that personal life and work balance be achieved? This case is about that. Case is about a public servant who is expected to be available on duty all the time. As a public servant, because you are public servant, a person with responsibilities towards the public, because of that, expectation is that you have no personal life, only public life. But as a human being, you do have a personal life. How do you balance those expectations of public servant with your personal life? The case is about that. So write this point in the introduction. Public servant expected to be on duty all the time, often compromising the work and personal life balance. How can this trade-off be resolved or at least minimized? What special challenges do women face in such situation? This is how you introduce your case. Ethical issues क्या हैं? Ethical issues here are the broader ethical issue being work-life balance वाला issue जो है, responsibility towards work versus towards your family, your social responsibilities. You also have to write ethical issues here from the perspective of different stakeholders. जैसे family के respect में हम लिखेंगे, women के respect में हम लिखेंगे क्या ethical issues हैं, men women relationship के aspect में हम लिखेंगे क्या ethical issues हैं. So broad set of ethical issue is personal work and personal life balance. That is a broad set of ethical issue in context of expectations from a public servant. The next set of ethical issue is the kind of expectations that your work sets for you. Your boss or your office expects, not just the public, it is the boss or the office expects that you are available to work all the time. Hence gives you tasks on odd days or odd times. What effect does this have on your family? Do your children not have to grow up? Are parents not the first school of children? What kind of values or what kind of environment are your children getting exposed to? What kind of social exposure do they have? None. So write down about from children, family's point of view, from husband's or father's point of view. If it is your responsibility, it is equally father's responsibility. कल हमने care economy की बात करी थी, तो हमने लिखा था ना आप एक share the care वाली चीज, that there must be some sort of sharing of that care aspect. So if his work is important, your work is also important. If his personal life is important, your personal life is also important. Family life obviously extremely important. That means ethical issue is what kind of division of responsibility takes place at the house. Is, for example, a woman expected to perform all the responsibility with respect to family, or some of those responsibilities must be shared with the men, including rearing of children, taking care of children. Your child is sick. If, let's say, the mother is not there, father must at least be there. If it's a Sunday and the father is working, that means the father's personal work life becomes more important as compared to the woman's work, the mother's work life. So identify these issues from the point of view of men, women और family relationships as well. तो हमको ये ethical issues में लिखने हैं. केवल वर्क लाइफ बैलेंस नहीं लिखना है या फिर केवल मैन वुमेन रिलेशनशिप नहीं लिखना है, हमको ये सारे एथिकल इश्यूज यहाँ पे लिखना है. लेकिन हाँ, प्राइमरी एथिकल इशू तो हमारा यही है, रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी टुवर्ड्स वर्क वर्सेस टुवर्ड्स द फैमिली. दिस इज द प्राइमरी एथिकल इशू हियर. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, एज आई सेड, वर्क कल्चर एंड एक्सपेक्टेशन ऑफ द वर्क प्लेस फ्रॉम द एम्प्लॉइज, parental duty towards the children, social development of the child, that is lack of inculcation of any values from the family, from the parents. ठीक है, these are the main ethical issues here, right? Some laws, अब सवाल में पूछा गया कि 4 लॉ स्पेसिफिकली बताने की कौन कौन से लॉज हैं. अब ये बड़ा फैक्चुअल पार्ट है. तो इफ यू नो दीज लॉज एज इन वुमेन स्पेसिफिक लॉज, देन यू शैल बी एबल टू राइट, अदरवाइज आप फिर वेग पार्ट नहीं लिख सकते हो. एटलीस्ट एक लॉ तो सबको पता होना चाहिए, मैटरनिटी बेनिफिट वाला लॉ, और दूसरा लॉ प्रिवेंशन ऑफ सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट वर्क प्लेस, ये भी सबको पता है. ये 2 लॉस तो जरूर लिखने ही लिखने हैं आंसर में. हाँ, क्या चीज? विशाखा गाइडलाइन से ही तो वो बना है, प्रिवेंशन ऑफ सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट एट वर्क प्लेस, तो वो अलग लॉ नहीं है. हाँ, विशाखा गाइडलाइंस 98 में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने दी, उसके बाद जाके 2013 में वो लॉ बना है. ठीक है, तो वो तो सेम चीज है, बट एटलीस्ट ये दीज 2 लॉज शुड बी देयर. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट देयर आर मेनी लॉज, जैसे फैक्ट्रीज एक्ट है. फैक्ट्रीज एक्ट बोलता है दैट वुमेन शुड नॉट वर्क पोस्ट 7 PM, सुबह 6 बजे से 7 बजे के बीच में वुमेन काम करेंगी, उसके सिवा काम नहीं करेंगी. फैक्ट्रीज एक्ट है. वी हैव इक्वल रेम्यूनरेशन एक्ट 1976, मीनिंग देयर शुड बी नो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन इन टर्म्स ऑफ पेमेंट्स, ट्रांसफर्स, पोजीशंस एक्सेट्रा विद इन मेन एंड वुमेन. Maternity benefit law as amended in 2017 is that 26 weeks of paid maternity leave. Sexual harassment at workplace, establishment of internal complaints committee, where मालूम है ना ये वाला एक्ट जो है, एस्टैब्लिशमेंट इंटरनल कंप्लेंट्स कमेटी. और भी एक्ट्स हैं, देयर इज शॉप्स एंड एस्टैब्लिशमेंट एक्ट, है ना. देयर वाज अ रीसेंट, ये करंट अफेयर्स में था, इट वाज इन करंट अफेयर्स 3 years बैक एंड लास्ट ईयर ऑल्सो. एक शॉप्स एंड एस्टैब्लिशमेंट एक्ट है थ्रू विच वी आर ट्राइंग टू ओवरकम दिस फर्स्ट प्रोविजन ऑफ फैक्ट्रीज एक्ट. फैक्ट्रीज एक्ट का फर्स्ट प्रोविजन देखो क्या है, क्या डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी नहीं लग रहा है. देखो पहला प्रोविजन फर्स्ट फैक्ट्रीज एक्ट का क्या लिखा है, no women should work post 7 PM. That means would factories be willing to employ women then? They would think that because they can't work. Now, in interest of safety of women, this provision is there. Versus in economic interest of women, this is, let's say, going against them, because factories would then assess कि क्योंकि 7 बजे के बाद काम नहीं कर सकती हैं, इसीलिए इनको एम्प्लॉय करने का क्या फायदा. I may want, अगर मैंने एक दिन आपसे 7:30 बजे तक काम करवा लिया तो मेरे ऊपर लेबर डिपार्टमेंट का छापा पड़ जाएगा, मेरे को जेल में डाल दिया जाएगा. So, the firm is then going to be reluctant to employ women or not. Get this point? So there was a Shops and Establishment Act which was amended to overcome this provision of Factories Act. This was last year's amendment, under which women are allowed to work in different establishments, shops and different establishment, without this restriction of Factories Act. तो ये जो Factories Act का application है, इसको हमने कुछ manufacturing units के ऊपर restrict कर दिया है. बाकी जगह जैसे shops हैं, shop में women 7 बजे के बाद, आप जैसे जाते हो मैकडॉनल्ड्स, शॉप है एक तरीके से, वहाँ पे आपको 7 बजे के बाद वुमेन वेटर नहीं मिलती है, कहते यू फाइंड दोस थिंग्स, फाइंड दोस एंटिटी, वुमेन कैशियर एंड ऑल दोस, यू फाइंड देम. सो इट इज बिकॉज ऑफ सच अमेंडमेंट्स दैट वुमेन आर एबल टू वर्क बियॉन्ड 7 PM ऑल्सो. तो यू कैन राइट दैट प्रोविजन ऑल्सो. देयर इज बीडीज एंड सिगरेट वर्कर्स एक्ट, उसके अंदर भी कुछ प्रोविजंस हैं कि क्या किस तरीके से वुमेन को. लेकिन हाँ, 4 पूछा है तो 4 लिखने हैं, याद कर लो ये 4 हैं. फाइन, ओके. सजेशन टू मिटिगेट सच वर्किंग कंडीशंस. Question में they have asked, imagine you are in a similar situation, what suggestions would you make to mitigate such working condition? Now this is very important part, not from content point of view. आप सब लिख सकते हैं इसके ऊपर, क्योंकि आप सब वर्क लाइफ बैलेंस के ऊपर सोच रहे होगे. आप सब लिखोगे कि भाई, एक लिखा भी है सवाल में कि एक स्ट्रिक्ट लाइन बनानी चाहिए, that there should not be breach of that line. I am willing to extend my working hours, I am willing to be flexible, but there must be some kind of hard limit here. The working policy must be such that, for example, does not any establishment, does it not give its employees the ability to attend to the sick people in their family? क्या मैं बीमार हो जाऊंगा उसके बाद मेरे को यहाँ पे नहीं जबरदस्ती तुमको क्लास लेनी ही लेनी है? वो तो एक इनह्यूमन पॉलिसी नहीं हो जाएगी. Somebody in my family is sick and then I have to necessarily come here कि भाई नहीं तुम आओ, तुमको तुम्हारी responsibility. Every establishment has to have this human element. So these are the hard lines. I am willing to, let's say, take 3 classes in a particular day. I am willing to come to Sundays to teach sometimes, let's say because course is not complete. But there have to be some hard lines that can't be breached between employers and employees. So I'm sure you can think about those hard lines कि क्या restriction होनी चाहिए, फिर क्या राइट्स होने चाहिए लेबर लॉज के. लेकिन क्यों, I know that all of you can write about this part, but how do you write is important here. दोबारा से पढ़ो सवाल क्या लिखा है. Imagine you are in a similar situation. You are, let's say, a victim of this case. What would then you do in this case? Here what matters is the language, the tone that you use in your answer. यहाँ पे आपकी टोन एक असर्टिव टोन होनी चाहिए. कंटेंट आप सबको पता है क्या लिखना है यहाँ पे, लेकिन टोन यहाँ पे एक असर्टिव होनी चाहिए. दैट यू हैव टू टेल द एग्जामिनर दैट दीज आर द हार्ड लाइंस दैट आई डोंट ब्रीच एट एनी कॉस्ट. I am not somebody who can be taken for granted by my employer. I know my rights. I know what you have to do with respect to me. I am willing to work for long hours, but at the same time, please don't expect me to work for these long hours. Don't make it a norm that I can work for long hours. If you can, let's say, suck more hours out of me, doesn't mean that you will. I allow you to take disadvantage of me every day. The tone of your answer is what matters in this C part. यहाँ पे आपको सजेस्टिव होके नहीं लिखना है कि मेरे ख्याल से ये करना चाहिए, सरकार को ये पॉलिसी बनानी चाहिए, एम्प्लॉयर को ये पॉलिसी बनानी चाहिए. ये सजेशन नहीं है, ये ज्ञान वाली स्टेज से आगे पहुंच चुके हैं. यहाँ पे इमेजिन यू आर इन द सेम सिचुएशन. दैट मीन्स यू हैव टू बी असर्टिव इन योर टोन हियर दैट आई एम गोइंग टू डू दिस थिंग. आई एम गोइंग टू ड्रॉ दीज हार्ड लाइन्स विच कांट बी ब्रीच. I am going to tell my employer that even though I'm a public servant, but that does not mean that I have no personal life of my own. It is not some emergency situation. कोई flood कहीं पे आ गया है और मेरे को तुरंत जाना है. It is expected that I be present there. कहीं पे कुछ disaster हो गया है, कुछ बड़ी दुर्घटना घट गई है. I'm a public servant. I am expected to be there. But note बनाना है ministry को present करने के लिए, उसके लिए आप मेरे को बोल रहे हो कि आप Sunday को भी काम करो. That is something that is unexpected. Difference आ रहा है समझ में? So write this in an assertive tone in your answer. That is all what I want to say in this particular part. Assertion. Tone is what matters in this C part. Work, please see this thing. For example, work culture is not just laws and policies, but also people and their dynamic relations. It is the responsibility of seniors to be sensitive about their team's needs and right of their workers to not be exploited. असर्टिव टोन समझ में आ रही है कैसे लिखते हैं. यू आर ट्राइंग टू टेल कि भाई वर्क कल्चर केवल पॉलिसी बनाने से नहीं होगा कि मेरे एम्प्लॉयज शाम को 7 बजे के बाद चले जाएंगे, मैं अपने एम्प्लॉयज से इतना काम लूंगा इतना काम नहीं लूंगा कि इनको ये सब पॉलिसी. वर्क कल्चर इज ऑल्सो अबाउट डायनेमिक्स बिटवीन पीपल, रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन पीपल. इट इज रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ सीनियर्स टू बी सेंसिटिव अबाउट देयर टीम्स नीड्स एंड द राइट ऑफ वर्कर टू नॉट बी एक्सप्लॉइटेड. रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ सीनियर्स टू नर्चर अ कोऑपरेटिव एंड एफिशिएंट वर्क कल्चर rather than a one of overwork and unreasonable expectations. Seniors की responsibility है. So therefore, you can give some suggestions that, for example, we need some kind of crash facility at workplace. Maternity benefit law लिखो और लिखो कि भी 50 ज़्यादा employees हैं तो वहाँ पे crash facility की आवश्यकता है workplace के ऊपर. So write this thing part. Write this part. Assertive communication to work seniors and to the husband about their respective responsibilities. Clear office policies to be complied with inputs to be compiled with inputs from the staff. Staff should tell that what kind of policies at work do they want. So इस तरीके से पॉलिसी होनी चाहिए. जैसे सिटीजन चार्टर है उस तरीके से एक ऑफिस चार्टर भी होना चाहिए. तो यू कैन गिव सच रिकमेंडेशंस कि इस तरीके से हम पॉलिसी बना सकते हैं. क्लियर? सबको आगे समझ में? बोलो क्या बोल रहे थे. एथिकल इश्यूज एंड डायलेमा. तुम बताओ क्या डिफरेंस होना चाहिए. देखो, डायलेमा इज जनरली एक्सप्रेस्ड as X versus Y. But that doesn't mean that dilemma always means X versus Y. Ethical issues और dilemma में as such कोई difference है नहीं. जब आप ethical issues लिखते हो आंसर में या फिर ethical dilemma लिखते हो तो आप दोनों में सेम चीज़ लिख सकते हो. लेकिन मैं अब जनरल एक्सप्रेशन की बात कर रहा हूँ कि जनरली कैसे एक्सप्रेस करते हैं. जनरली व्हेन यू आर आस्क्ड अबाउट इश्यूज यू सिंपली राइट इश्यूज 1 2 3 की ये इश्यूज हैं. व्हेन यू आर आस्क्ड अबाउट डायलेमास यू राइट देम इन द नेचर इन द फॉर्म दैट देयर इज अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट बिटवीन दीज टू थिंग्स. उस तरीके से हम डायलेमास को एक्सप्रेस कर सकते हैं. हैविंग सेड दैट मैं दोबारा से तुमको बोल देता हूँ, अगर ऐसी कोई रूल नहीं है कि व्हेन यू आर राइटिंग एथिकल डायलेमास तब आपको जरूरी है कि A वर्सेस B X वर्सेस Y फॉर्म में लिखना है, ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है. आप एथिकल डायलेमा को भी सिंपली वैल्यूज लिख सकते हो. दैट वैल्यूज आर दीस एंड दीस आर द एथिकल डायलेमास इन द केस. डायलेमा इज विद रिस्पेक्ट टू ऑनेस्टी ऑफ द पर्सन. डायलेमा इज विद रिस्पेक्ट टू इंटीग्रिटी. डायलेमा इज विद रिस्पेक्ट टू कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट. आप इस तरीके से भी डायलेमा लिख सकते हो. लेकिन नॉर्मली हम डायलेमा जब लिखते हैं तो हम x वर्सेस y फॉर्मेट में लिखते हैं, ठीक है। चलो you should write one line in front of ethical issue also. One line, not one paragraph. No, then also चाहे discuss लिखा है चाहे what लिखा है, in both case write down an ethical issue and explain it in one line, ठीक है, not more than 2 lines in any case, ठीक है। चलो next 10th question पे आते हैं। Vinod is an honest and sincere IAS officer. Recently, he has taken over as a managing director of State Road Transport Corporation. His 6th transfer in past 3 years. His peers acknowledge his vast knowledge, affability, and uprightness. The chairman of State Road Transport Corporation is a powerful politician and is very close to the chief minister. Vinod comes to know about many alleged irregularities of the corporation and high-handedness of chairman in financial matters. तो रोड ट्रांसपोर्ट के कॉर्पोरेशन के जो चेयरमैन है पावरफुल पॉलिटिशियन है, क्लोज टू चीफ मिनिस्टर हैं। विनोद हु इज द डायरेक्टर मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर ऑफ स्टेट रोड ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉर्पोरेशन गेट्स टू नो अबाउट मेनी alleged irregularities there, high handedness of chairman in financial matters. Now a board member of the corporation belonging to the opposition party meets Vinod and hands over a few documents along with video recording in which chairman appears to be demanding bribe for placing a huge order for the supply of QMR tires. एक बोर्ड मेंबर जो है ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉर्पोरेशन का जो बोर्ड है जिसके चेयरमैन एक पॉलिटिशियन है, one of the board members who belongs to the opposition party meets Vinod and hands over few documents along with video recording in which chairman appears to be demanding bribe for placing a huge order for supply of QMR tires. Vinod recollects the chairman expediting clearing of pending bills of QMR tires. Vinod confronts the board member as to why is he shying away from exposing the chairman with the so-called solid proof he has with him. The member informs him that the chairman refuses to yield to his threats. He adds that Vinod may even earn recognition and public support if he himself exposes the chairman. Further, he tells Vinod that once his party comes to power, Vinod's professional growth would be assured. सबको केस आ गया समझ में क्या है? विनोद ने बोर्ड मेंबर से बोला कि भैया आप अपने आप क्यों नहीं जाते हो, आप खुद बोर्ड मेंबर हो, why are you shying away from exposing the chairman, आप खुद मीडिया के पास चले जाओ, with the so-called solid proof that you have. The member informs him that the chairman refuses to yield to his threat. He adds that Vinod may even earn recognition and public support if he himself exposes the chairman. Further, he tells Vinod that once his party comes to power, Vinod's professional growth would be assured. Vinod is aware that he may be penalized if he exposes chairman and may further be transferred to a distant place. He knows that opposition party stands a better chance of coming to power in the forthcoming elections. However, he also realizes that the board member is trying to use him for his own political gains. केस आगे समझ में क्या है? As a consigned civil servant, evaluate the options available to Vinod. In the light of above case, comment about the ethical issues that may arise due to politicization of a bureaucracy. Case clear है? Case सबको clear हो गया क्या है? What is the case? Is the case about bribery? It is not about bribery. Is the case about investigation? No. Is the case about honesty? No, it's not about honesty. The case is about use of a person by another person for his own personal gains. Use of a civil servant, in this case a person in a decision making position, by a board member for his own personal or political gains. Case इस चीज के ऊपर precisely है. Yes, the case has element of bribery, has element of investigation, has element of honesty. ये सारे elements है, लेकिन case ultimately इस चीज के ऊपर है जो कि हमको सवाल में ही पता चल रहा है. Question is that political neutral bureaucracy, politicization of bureaucracy. यहाँ पे सवाल में भी हमको लिखा हुआ है. तो identify that the key issue here is this. Is this clear? Key issue क्या है? As a consigned civil servant, evaluate the options that Vinod has. क्या क्या विनोद के पास options हैं? This is where I will explain about evidence वाला part. How does Vinod get evidence here? Somebody has given that evidence. Now please understand the difference here. A board member approaches Vinod with some evidence, maybe solid evidence, maybe solid proof. But one, this evidence is unlawfully obtained. It is not evidence obtained after investigation. It is somebody who has some video recording, some proof that this thing has taken place. It is not evidence admissible in court of law. One. Second, importantly, if the person who is a board member himself has a responsibility, why is he not going to the police with respect to this or to media with respect to this? That means it is not my, as in Vinod's responsibility to act upon this evidence. ये हमको ध्यान रखना है. ये मेरी जिम्मेदारी नहीं है कि मैं इस एविडेंस के ऊपर एक्ट करूं. फिर आप सवाल ये पूछ सकते हो कि तब क्या होता अगर यही एविडेंस कोई आम नागरिक लेके मेरे पास आता तो. Some ordinary citizen who might not have, apparently speaking, a direct political interest. यहाँ पे जो एक political person आया है जो कि बोर्ड का पार्ट है, अगर कोई, if some ordinary citizen had come to me with this evidence, then what should I have done in this case? I should have done the same thing that I will be doing in this case then. One, I am not supposed to act on this evidence. As in, I am not supposed to take some action based on this evidence. But this evidence presents credible allegations. That means there has to be some sort of inquiry here. अब inquiry करने का काम मेरा नहीं है, वो किसका काम है? Audit department का काम है inquiry करने का. Inquiry cannot begin on the basis of allegations even with solid evidence. Understand the difference, key difference coming here. Inquiry from a board member or an ordinary person cannot begin on the basis of allegations, even if allegations have strong evidence supporting them. Inquiry will begin only when there is a formal complaint that is lodged. आप बोर्ड मेंबर हो, आप ऑर्डिनरी सिटीजन हो, दोनों केस में आपको एक फॉर्मल कंप्लेंट लॉन्च करनी पड़ेगी, तभी मैं एक्ट कर सकता हूं. फॉर्मल कंप्लेंट जब लॉन्च होगी तब तो मेरे को एक्ट करना ही पड़ेगा. I am the managing director, I have to act, I have to constitute an inquiry commission or I have to involve police here, and then I will be acting on this particular allegation and evidence along that you have presented. But for that, a formal complaint is necessary. Understand the nuances of legal part, law here, and how do you have to act in a case. जैसे वो बैंक मैनेजर वाला केस था, वहां पे आपके पास हियर से एविडेंस, हियर से आपको पता चला है क्या आपको कुछ एक्ट, ना तो आपके पास पावर है ना आपको वहां पे कुछ एक्ट करना है. यहाँ पे आपके पास पावर तो है, यू आर मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर, यू कैन एक्ट, बट अगेन वन, दिस एविडेंस वाज अनलॉफुली कलेक्टेड, एंड सेकंड, देयर इज नो फॉर्मल कंप्लेंट. If it was a citizen, if it is a board member or any other person, this evidence will be investigated only after there is a formal complaint registered. So register a formal complaint. You have not come to me to register a formal complaint. Go to the proper department. At best, I can direct you कि आप department जाओ, वहाँ पे formal complaint register कर लो, and then we are going to take action. So recognizing this part becomes important here. Evidence unlawfully collected is not admissible in court of law. And in this case, it is bureaucracy which is being used for political interests. And when bureaucracy is used for personal or political interest, it is harmful to the state, harmful to the people, harmful to the bureaucrat himself. So this is the introduction. You explain this part to the examiner in the first 3 or 4 lines. Write down about evidence wala part and use of bureaucracy for political gains. What are the options that you have? कंसल्टेंट सिविल सर्वेंट के पास क्या ऑप्शंस हैं आपके पास, उनको एनालाइज करना है. अगेन जब हम ऑप्शंस लिखेंगे तो ऑप्शंस ऐसे नहीं होने चाहिए कि जिनको पढ़ते ही रिजेक्ट कर दिया जाए. ब्रॉडली क्या ऑप्शंस है बताओ? ब्रॉडली स्पीकिंग क्या ऑप्शंस हैं? एक्सेप्ट कर लो और इन्वेस्टिगेट करो, या फिर रिजेक्ट कर दो और वापस भेज दो. ये ब्रॉडली 2 ऑप्शन है. अब इनको लिखना किस तरीके से है? दिस विल कम विद प्रैक्टिस. देखो मैंने समय लगा के लिखा है तो मेरे पास समय है, मैं 2 घंटे में शायद आंसर लिखूंगा, आपको तो 10 मिनट में आंसर लिखना है. तो अगेन इट विल कम विद प्रैक्टिस. Refuse to accept the evidence and maintain status quo if complaint is not formally registered. Remember, अभी हमने डिस्कस किया formal registration of complaint. Formal के ऊपर ही हम ऐड करेंगे. If complaint is not formally registered, then you simply refuse to accept the evidence and maintain the status quo as it is. Or second option is initiate a formal inquiry into the matter to establish truth. That is after a formal complaint. If formal complaint, the option that you will write in would be in this manner. If a formal complaint is not registered, then you are not going to accept the evidence and you would maintain status quo in that case. If it is registered, it becomes your duty to initiate a formal inquiry into the matter to establish the truth. ये आपके पास दो options है यहाँ पे. Now you can analyze कि इनकी क्या merit है, क्या demerit है. If you refuse to accept the evidence, maintain status quo, formal complaint is not registered, merit would be, क्या merit होगी अगर आपने evidence को accept नहीं किया और inquiry initiate नहीं करी, इसकी merit क्या होगी? मेरिट में ये नहीं लिखना, देखो मैंने नहीं लिखा है और आपको भी नहीं लिखना है. मेरिट में ये नहीं लिखना कि मेरी पॉलिटिकल रिलेशनशिप्स अच्छी बनी रहेंगी, कि मैंने एविडेंस नहीं लिया, इंक्वायरी स्टार्ट नहीं करी, हेंस आई एम इन गुड बुक्स ऑफ द करंट चेयरमैन. दैट इज नॉट द मेरिट दैट यू हैव टू राइट. अगर आपने ये मेरिट लिखी तो आप सवाल के ट्रैप में फंस जाओगे. सवाल में क्या पूछा है, किस चीज का केस है? पॉलिटिकल न्यूट्रलिटी का. और आप मेरिट कैसे एक्सप्लेन कर रहे हो कि मैं पॉलिटिकल मास्टर की गुड बुक्स के अंदर हूं. So you are then falling into that trap. So don't write this should never be written as a merit in, ये तो सवाल पूछ लिया गया इसमें politicization of bureaucracy के ऊपर. You should never write this thing as a merit. That merit is that I will have good relationship with the politician or with the chairman. That is never a merit. My personal progress or my professional career, personal benefit or my professional benefit, my career will progress well. This is never a merit that you should be writing. Merit here is that expect that irregularities will be exposed in the audit. Second merit would be you will maintain political neutrality in this case, that I don't act on hearsay. Demerit would be that you are failing to perform your public duty, which is to act when you have to present it with solid evidence. You are failing to perform public duty. Further, there will be crisis of conscience. समझते हो क्या है crisis of conscience? लिखा है सवाल में कि that I am an honest civil servant, upright civil servant, and still I am failing to act. My honesty proof कि मेरे को पिछले 3 साल में 6 बार ट्रांसफर किया गया है. This is a crisis of conscience that I am going to have. ये demerit है. Initiate formal inquiry into the matters to establish truth. Merit would be it would expedite the action to establish the truth. Shows willingness to act on actionable intelligence. That means it reflects leadership on your part. Shows willingness to act on actionable intelligence. Clear है? Merit क्या है? Demerit क्या है? Political neutrality आपकी compromise हो रही है यहाँ पे. You might be used as a tool in the hands of the opposition. That is the demerit here. Clear to all? Merits, demerits. Ethical issues in, हाँ बोलो. Courage, obviously yes, बिल्कुल. Courage definitely इसका एक part है. That are you willing to take that courageous action, that you are willing to start that formal inquiry because you've been presented with formal evidence. Ethical issues in politicization of bureaucracy. ये तो आसान सवाल है, शायद फर्स्ट पार्ट में सवाल था इसके ऊपर, पॉलिटिकल न्यूट्रलिटी के ऊपर. थ्योरेटिकल पार्ट में इसके ऊपर है क्या सवाल? हर साल नॉर्मली होता है, तो आई डोंट नो. हाँ, हर साल ऑलमोस्ट होता है. आई वाज एक्सपेक्टिंग कि इस साल भी होगा. हर साल ऑलमोस्ट होता है ये सवाल कि पॉलिटिसाइजेशन ऑफ ब्यूरोक्रेसी के क्या क्या एथिकल एस्पेक्ट्स हैं. व्हेन ब्यूरोक्रेसी बिकम्स पॉलिटिसाइज्ड, व्हाट हैपेंस? mediocrity gets promoted then. Mediocre bureaucrats reach the top rather than innovative or risk-taking bureaucrats. Mediocrity gets promoted. Politicization of bureaucracy. Corruption increases. Why? Because bureaucrats are not going to take action against politicians. Politicians not against bureaucrats. Corruption increases. Breach of trust of people in the governance system. Loss of public trust. Government is supposed to work in the welfare, well-being for the people, but government is now working for the well-being of private persons occupying important position in the government. तो ये सब aspects हैं politician of bureaucracy के. Corruption, breach of public trust, inefficiency, promotion of mediocrity, and not the ones who take risks. Fine. You should write, जब options पूछा गया तो you should write कि इसमें हम क्या करेंगे. Explicitly नहीं पूछा है that what is it that you are going to do, but still you should write that what course of action are you going to take. You can choose any of the course. That I will not choose to accept the evidence and maintain status quo. You can choose to initiate an inquiry. दोनों कर सकते हो. मेरे ख्याल से preferable course क्या होगा? You can ask that I will ask the person to lodge a formal complaint and then I will start an inquiry. That is the preferable course of action. Otherwise, if the person refuses to lodge a formal complaint, then in that case, I will not be acting on this evidence which is unlawfully collected. तो ये हमारा preferable course होना चाहिए. मेरे according ये preferable course होना चाहिए. Ask him to lodge a formal complaint, right? बोल दो यार भाई, आपको कंप्लेंट करनी, आपको सजेशन देने की जरूरत नहीं है कि भाई आप मीडिया चले जाओ, लीक कर दो. आप सिंपली बोलो आप एक फॉर्मल कंप्लेंट लॉन्च कर दो, क्या है. तो दैट इज व्हाट यू शुड डू इन दिस केस. क्लियर? आगे बढ़े. ऑलराइट. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन नंबर 11. You have just been appointed as Additional Director General of CPWD. You have appointed as Additional Director General of CPWD. The Chief Architect of your division, who is to retire in 6 months, is passionately working on a very important project, the successful completion of which would earn him a lasting reputation for the rest of his life. कोई ब्रिज बनना होगा तो चीफ आर्किटेक्ट उसके ऊपर काम कर रहे हैं, which is going to earn him a lasting reputation for rest of his life. Chief architect of your division, who is to retire in next 6 months. A new lady architect, Seema, trained at Manchester School of Architecture, UK, joined as a senior architect in your division. During the briefing about the project, Seema made some suggestions which would not only add value to the project but would also reduce completion time. So a new person has joined the project, experience, studied from a well-known place, reputed place. She joins the project and makes some suggestions which would not only add the value to the project but would also reduce completion time. This has made the chief architect insecure and he's constantly worried that all credit will go to her. Subsequently, he adopted a passive and aggressive behavior towards her and has become disrespectful to her. Seema felt it embarrassing as the chief architect left no chance of humiliating her. He would very often correct her in front of other colleagues, raise his voice while speaking to her. This continuous harassment has resulted in her losing confidence and self-esteem. She felt perpetually tensed, anxious, and stressed. She appeared to be in awe of him since he had a long tenure in the office and has vast experience in the area of her work. You are aware of her outstanding academic credentials and career record in previous organizations. However, you fear that this harassment may result in compromising her much needed contribution in the important project and may adversely impact her emotional well-being. You have also come to know from her peers that she is contemplating tendering her resignation. Clear है केस सबको समझ में आ गया है? किस चीज का केस है बताओ? Toxicity at work culture. Insecurity of some person, some more experienced person from let's say younger person. Insecurity का केस है. Mental harassment का केस है. Sexual harassment का केस तो नहीं है. Please understand this thing. Understand that what is the case about? The case is about toxic work culture where seniors are unwilling to take feedback, unwilling to be corrected. And if corrected, they belittle the new joinees. They belittle them, they insult them, which leads to mental harassment of these people, of these new joinees. Reduces their confidence. What kind of people would be able to survive in this system? जिनको हम कई बार बोलते हैं boot lickers. Mediocres would be the one that will survive in the system. Why? Because I am an independent woman and I have my vast experience, vast knowledge from a reputed institute. And you are trying to belittle me at every instant. That means I'm going to leave this organization. So those with innovative abilities, those with good credentials, they can't survive in this organization. Only those that are willing to submit to the seniors, yes men, only those that are yes men are going to survive in this office. केस किस चीज पे है सबको? अब इतना कुछ नहीं लिखना इंट्रोडक्शन के ना, लेकिन ना यहीं से आपको 2-3 सेंटेंसेस निकाल के इंट्रोडक्शन कर लिखना. दिस इज व्हाट द केस इज ऑल अबाउट. सो इंट्रोडक्शन इज राइट डाउन दैट द केस इज अबाउट दिस एस्पेक्ट. टॉक्सिक वर्क कल्चर, mental harassment by seniors to new joinees, inability to take feedback, a system which discourages honest feedback and hence promotes mediocres to rise to the top. The case is about that part. Work culture के ऊपर case है, right? What are ethical issues involved in the above case? What options are available to you in order to complete the project as well as retain Seema in the organization? You being the additional director of the CPWD, तो आपके पास क्या options हैं? What would be your response to Seema's predicament? What measures would you institute to prevent such occurrence from happening in your organization? सीमा की predicament जो सीमा प्रॉब्लम फेस कर रही है उस पर आपका क्या रिस्पॉन्स होगा और क्या मेजर्स आप ले सकते हो अपनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के अंदर कि जिससे ये वाले इश्यूज इस टाइप से ना दोबारा से रीसर्फेस हो, बार बार ये इस टाइप का कल्चर ठीक हो जाए. लेट्स सी व्हाट विल वी डू. इंट्रोडक्शन क्लियर है सबको क्या है? Write down about what this case is about. It is about, as you said, toxic work culture. Perfectly fine, right? Feedback लिख सकते हो, belittling लिख सकते हो, insulting लिख सकते हो, me being close to suggestions from my juniors लिख सकते हो, not honoring or not giving due value to more experienced, well-educated people. All these things are same things. You can write any of these things in your introduction. Ethical issues क्या हैं? यही ethical issues हैं हमारे. Lack of cooperative work environment is the ethical issues here. Insecurity probably stemming from performance evaluation is the issue here. Evaluation is the issue here. Organizational support to new and experienced workers. Does organization honor them or organization simply starts to quote unquote rag them? Ragging उनकी कर रही है organization एक तरीके से, उनको promote नहीं कर रही, discourage कर रही है. Feedback mechanism के ऊपर है. Values that guide public servants के ऊपर है. That are public servants guided by the value of honest feedback, objectivity, or are they guided by value of simply being yes men to their senior? Organization hierarchy की value है या फिर काम सही और efficient होना चाहिए उसकी value है. क्या लिखा है सवाल के अंदर कि सीमा हैज गिवन सजेशन दैट विल रिड्यूस द वर्किंग टाइम एंड विल इंप्रूव एफिशिएंसी ऑफ द add some new features to the project. So are they guided by value, are they guided by objectivity, efficiency, or are they guided by organizational hierarchy in this space? So these are the ethical issues involved in this case, right? तो इस तरीके से ethical issues identify करेंगे. जब केस क्या है ये identify कर लोगे maturity से, then this becomes quite easy task. Options available to additional director general, to our director general, क्या क्या options है हमारे पास? Again options में you don't write that I will ask her to go to internal complaints committee, क्योंकि ये sexual harassment का मामला नहीं है, तो आप यहाँ पे नहीं लिखोगे ICC में जाओ वहाँ पे कंप्लेंट कर दो. केस ये भी नहीं है, मतलब ऑप्शन ये भी नहीं है आपके पास कि आप जो चीफ आर्किटेक्ट है उसको फायर कर दोगे. ऑप्शन ये भी नहीं है आपके पास कि आप सीमा को बोलोगे कि आप रिजाइन कर दो बिकॉज योर प्रेजेंस इज द पर्सन इज मोर वैल्यूएबल. तो डोंट राइट सच ऑप्शंस दैट कैन बी रिजेक्टेड इन द फर्स्ट इंस्टेंस व्हेन समबडी सी. तो इस तरीके से ऑप्शन नहीं लिखने. अगेन ऑप्शंस मस्ट बी क्वालिटेटिव ऑप्शंस, ऑप्शंस व्हिच रिफ्लेक्ट दैट यू अंडरस्टैंड द डायलेमा हियर. सवाल में लिखा भी है चीज. What options available to you in order to complete the project as well as to retain CMA in your organization? तो इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हमको ऑप्शन देंगे. What options you have? Request CMA to stay away from chief architect as it is only a matter of few months before he retires. As in, bear for some time. I understand your problem, but bear for some time. Request her to stay away from him. Some months he'll retire and then we can have a proper work culture. Or warn the chief architect of his behavior and the uncomfortable environment that he has created. Take necessary corrective steps. ये दो options हैं. In first case, देखो क्या aspect है. Why is it that you are reluctant to act? You are reluctant to act because chief architect is a senior person. 60 साल के हो चुके, रिटायर होने वाले हैं. आपके दिमाग में क्या चल रहा है भाई? एक person you see that work culture is not good, a person is not comfortable at work, a asset of your organization is not comfortable at work. Somebody who's giving good inputs, she is not comfortable at work. Creating toxic work culture, the person's behavior. And why are you reluctant to act? You are reluctant to act because the person because of whom all this situation is being created, that person is a senior person. इसी कारण से तो act नहीं कर रहे हो ना. तो इस चीज को recognize करना है अपने आंसर के अंदर. तो इसी से हम आंसर ऑप्शन लिखेंगे. क्या ऑप्शन हमारे पास है? One option is that you ask सीमा that please stay away from for some time. It is matter of only 6 months. He will retire and then he'll go. Then we can have a proper work culture discussion, deliberations. Second is you confront the problem first hand. Confront the chief architect first hand and say that, warn the person that it is because of you that work culture is getting compromised. Let the chief architect know, however senior he or she is, you are not irreplaceable. You think you are irreplaceable, hence you can do anything that you want. You think you are senior, hence you can do anything you want. Let the person know. Confront the person about the negative vibes that he has created at the workplace. ये दो option आपके पास हैं. Ask her to stay, and as in stay away from the person. It is a matter of few months. And second, warn the person, confront the person directly. Is this clear to everybody? कैसे सीमा के predicament को आप कम करोगे? What would your response be? How can you? क्या लिखा है? That she is contemplating resignation. She is anxious. She is losing her confidence. She is losing her willingness to work and come to the office. ये सब चीज़ लिखी आंसर के. How would you address her predicament as the chief of the office, if I may use the word, as the person who is senior most in this office, the additional director general, if you are as the person who is responsible to take decisions, as that person, it becomes your duty to make sure that the work culture is supportive of you, all the people who are working there. How do you make that supportive work culture? First and foremost, you should allow her to vent out her frustration. Venting out is the first important step. As in, you will have to talk to her, assure her that the office understands her problem and the office is well behind her, entire office is well behind her, stands steadfast behind her because she is right and the other person is wrong. Assurance. Recognize her contribution, assure her of full organizational support, tell her that we have warned the chief architect to mend his behavior. These are the things that give assurance to the person. If my contribution is recognized, I'm not belittled. Tell her that her suggestions are being implemented. That means I know that I am of some value to this organization. Tell her that office understands her importance, her value, and office is solidly behind her. Assure her of the full organizational support. Warn the CA, as in tell her that the chief architect has been warned to mend his behavior. Show her that we are engaging with more external experts. You are an employee, you are an expert. वो घर की मुर्गी दाल बराबर वाली चीज है. अगर आपकी बात नहीं सुनी गई है, लेकिन अगर मैंने बाहर से किसी और एक्सपर्ट को बुलाया है and the expert suggests the same thing that you suggested, that means now the chief architect will be hearing or not. And when you get to know that this is happening, that means now you are more confident that yes, I can give these advices. Organization listens to my advices. So tell her that we are engaging external experts also who are also giving similar suggestions, and that means her suggestions are correct and are valuable to the organization. So this is the way that you resolve her predicament. You don't resolve predicament by firing the chief architect. You don't resolve predicament by asking her कि आप internal complaints committee में जाओ और बोलो कि भाई I am being harassed here. Yes, there is mental harassment, but it doesn't mean that यहाँ पे as far as this chief architect is concerned, it is a problem of work culture, not a problem of some legal aspect, some violation of somebody's privacy or somebody's modesty that is taking place. वो different चीजें हैं. Differentiate करके रखना है हमको इन चीजों के अंदर. Further measure what can be done. How can you ensure that such things do not reoccur in the organization? One, first and foremost, there must be an open work culture that develops. Open का मतलब क्या है? That people are open to feedback, open to suggestions. How will they be made open to suggestions? When the performance review mechanism is such. I am a senior person and my performance is being evaluated. My performance must be evaluated not on the basis only of my seniority. It must be on the basis of what all have I achieved in my position. If I did not achieve something because I was not open to feedback, that means there is a negative part on my performance, negative part on my career, on my performance in a particular job, in a particular position. Open feedback becomes a really important part of addressing these things. अगर feedback open नहीं है, हमारे कंट्री में सारे ब्यूरोक्रेट्स की समथिंग कॉल्ड एज ACR प्रिपेयर की जाती है. सारे गवर्नमेंट सर्वेंट्स की क्या होती है ACR? एनुअल कॉन्फिडेंशियल रिपोर्ट. एनुअल कॉन्फिडेंशियल रिपोर्ट के बेसिस के ऊपर आपका प्रमोशन या ट्रांसफर होता है. ACR में हमारे ब्यूरोक्रेट्स को almost all bureaucrats, 100% of bureaucrats get 10 out of 10. Everybody is rated outstanding. If everyone is rated outstanding, that means everybody is basically standing out of the senior's office and try to impress them in some way. That is what is meant by the term outstanding then. अगर इतनी ही outstanding हमारी bureaucracy होती, तो then we would have become, let's say, a developed high income country many years back. So we must understand the feedback mechanism. This feedback is closed feedback. We don't provide honest feedback to, let's say, bureaucrats, in this case the chief architect. We actively discourage such honest conversations. Only those who are compliant with the seniors order, the hierarchy, only those are the ones that get promoted. So therefore, feedback mechanism becomes a very important part here. performance review system that encourages efficiency at workplace. This is the very important part here. Apart from that, certainly sensitization is an important part here. Workers must be sensitized towards other workers' needs, mental aspects, how should they behave at workplace. Work culture must be such that it encourages honest conversations about different aspects of work. If somebody is facing such issues, there must be a proper place where they can vent out or express their issues that they are facing. तो अगर आपके पास कुछ ऐसा अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं जहाँ पे आप एक्सप्रेस कर सकते हो, दैट मीन्स यू आर गोइंग टू ऐसे गुड के जीने वाली चीज हो जाएगी. देन मस्ट बी सम प्रॉपर चैनल्स फॉर यू टू एक्सप्रेस एनी काइंड ऑफ फ्रस्ट्रेशन दैट यू हैव और प्रॉब्लम दैट यू आर फेसिंग एट वर्क प्लेस. सो देयर सम स्टेप दैट कैन बी टेकन. Special cells where such issues of discriminatory behavior can be expressed and redressed. Develop a culture of feedback. Regular training of staff to be abreast with latest developments. जैसे बाहर भेजो, and therefore the lady Seema has come from a foreign university, reputed university, and has experience outside the government department. So send your bureaucrats or send people in government service also to such foreign universities or departments, companies where they can learn these new things, and hence they are more open to such kind of environment. तो ये suggestions हैं जब हम implement कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, चलो लास्ट सवाल के ऊपर आ जाए. Question 12. You hold a responsible position in the ministry in government. One day in the morning, you received a call from school of your 11-year-old son that you are required to come and meet the principal. ये आसान सवाल है, लेकिन इसके अंदर कंटेंट बहुत सारा है लिखने के लिए. आसान और अच्छा ऑब्वियसली. You hold a responsible position in ministry in the government, and one day in the morning you received a call from school of your 11-year-old son that you are required to come and meet the principal. You proceed to the school and find your son in the principal's office. The principal informs you that your son has been found wandering aimlessly in the grounds during the time classes were in progress. The class teacher further informs you that your son has lately become a loner and did not respond to questions in the class. He had also been unable to perform well in the football trials held recently. You bring your son back from the school, and in the evening you along with your wife try to find out the reasons for your son's changed behavior. After repeated cajoling, your son shares that some children had been making fun of him in the class as well as in the WhatsApp group of the students by calling him stunted, duh, and a frog. He tells you the names of the few children who are main culprits but pleads with you to let the matter rest. After a few days during a sporting event where you and your wife have gone to watch your son play, one of your colleagues' son show you a video in which students have caricatured your son. Further, he also points out to the perpetrators who were sitting in the stands. You purposefully walk past them with your son and go home. Next day, you find on social media a video denigrating you, your son, and even your wife, stating that you engage in physical bullying of children on sports field. क्या समझ में आ रहा है क्या है? आपको आपके फ्रेंड के बच्चे ने एक क्लिप दिखाया स्पोर्टिंग इवेंट के ऊपर जहां पे आपके बच्चे का कैरिकेचर बना रखा था, मेड फन ऑफ योर सन. He points out that these are the students who are responsible for this thing. You take a stand, you take your son and you walk past those students. Let's say proudly you walk past those students. Points out the perpetrators sitting in the stand, you purposefully walk past them with your son and go home. Next day you find on अगले दिन social media पे क्या हुआ? A video denigrating you, your son and even wife, stating that you engaged in physical bullying of children on the sports field. The video became viral on social media. Your friends and colleagues began calling you to find out the details. One of your juniors advised you to make a counter video giving background and explaining that nothing that happened on the field. You in turn posted a video which you have captured during the sporting event, identifying the likely perpetrators who were responsible for your son's predicament. You have also narrated what has actually happened in the field and made attempts to bring out the adverse effects of misuse on social media. Based on the above case study, discuss the ethical issues involved in the use of social media. Discuss the pros and cons of using social media by you to put across facts to counter the fake propaganda against your family. सवाल आ गया समझ में क्या है? दो सवाल हैं यहाँ पे भाई. Based on this case, discuss ethical issues involved in use of social media. So there are 1000 issues involved in use of social media, but you have to restrict yourself to this particular case. ये केस किस चीज के ऊपर है? साइबर बुलिंग. गुड. और आसान कैसे, मैंने बोला आसान कैसे, आप इजीली आइडेंटिफाई कर पाओगे कि केस का इशू क्या है. द केस इज ऑन साइबर बुलिंग, सो यू मस्ट बी एबल टू आइडेंटिफाई दैट पार्ट. That means you have to identify ethical issues in this particular context. Cyberbullying aspect, mental effect on children aspect, because they are of impressionable age, hence what kind of mental effect can this have on them? How are they likely to be discouraged from any social events, any kind of socialization? These are the ethical issues that you must identify. तो हाँ, इंट्रोडक्शन में तो हम यही लिखेंगे, केस जो है साइबर बुलिंग का केस है. In age of social media, things get amplified a lot. So this is that case. You write down these things. Ethical issues in context of the particular case, वो identify करने हैं, and discuss the pros and cons of using social media by you to put across facts to counter the fake propaganda against your family. ये specific सवाल है इस केस का कि आपने जो काउंटर वीडियो बना के डाला है, उस काउंटर वीडियो के प्रोज एंड कॉन्स बताने हैं कि उससे क्या पॉजिटिव एस्पेक्ट्स हो सकते हैं, क्या नेगेटिव एस्पेक्ट्स हो सकते हैं. केस इजी है. आई एम श्योर यू कैन इजीली राइट एन आंसर टू दिस केस. But again, easy are those questions. If the question is easy, getting marks in that question is equally difficult in that case. मुश्किल सवाल के ऊपर तो क्योंकि कुछ ही लोग आंसर लिख पाते हैं तो फिर उनको मार्क्स मिल जाता है, कुछ मार्क्स सबको मिल जाते हैं. लेकिन आसान सवाल के ऊपर इट बिकम्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू गेट मोर मार्क्स. डिफरेंशियल वहाँ पे कम हो जाता है. एवरीबडी गेट्स लेट्स से 7 मार्क्स, यू विल गेट 8 मार्क्स और 7.5 मार्क्स. तो डिफरेंशियल क्रिएट करना है हमको इस सवाल के अंदर. क्या है एथिकल इश्यूज, फटाफट देख लेते हैं. एथिकल इश्यूज आर दैट ऑफ इंट्रोडक्शन. आई एम श्योर यू गेट द पॉइंट. सोशल मीडिया एंड इट्स इफेक्ट्स ऑन चिल्ड्रन, द मल्टीप्लायर इफेक्ट दैट सोशल मीडिया हैज, राइट. एथिकल इश्यूज इन दिस केस, obviously cyberbullying is an ethical issue. Magnification by social media, it has speed, reach, reactions. As a result of that, everything gets magnified on social media. That becomes a big ethical issue here. Fake news, because in this context there's a fake news, that is a fake clip. Personal attacks, the recent, this is a little bit out of context, but just to explain you with an example. The recent action that government took against NewsClick, कल ही की न्यूज़ है ना, NewsClick के जर्नलिस्ट को सरकार ने अरेस्ट किया या क्वेश्चन किया पूरे दिन भर. तो अब जो जर्नलिस्ट मान ले जिनकी क्वेश्चनिंग करी सरकार ने, now they have been questioned, they have been taken to custody. That's a valid reason for the government, because the government think that they are, let's say, taking Chinese money and let's say peddling some fake news against the country. That is okay, valid reasoning. So there is a criticism point to that. But then from criticism, when it turns to personal interest, personal attacks, there is a very thin line there, and quickly social media turns criticism into personal attacks. Now instead of criticizing those journalists for that part, now what you will see is, or what you have been seeing is, mostly they have been criticized on their personal part. ये ऐसा दिखता है, इसका ये entitlement है, इसके ये relationship है, personal part, rather than the issue. Criticism immediately transitions to personal attacks. आपने कुछ लिखा है सरकार के बारे में, सरकार को प्रेज करते हुए, तो सबसे पहले आपका आर्गुमेंट कोई नहीं पढ़ने वाला है. ये पढ़ा जाएगा कि भाई आपकी वाइफ सरकार की मेंबर है. आपने सरकार को क्रिटिसाइज किया किसी पॉलिसी के ऊपर, आपका क्रिटिसिज्म गया भाड़ में. क्या देखा जाएगा कि भाई आप पॉलिटिकल पार्टी के मेंबर हो या फिर आपके उसके साथ लिंक्स हैं. पर्सनल एस्पेक्ट. तो क्रिटिसिज्म गेट्स ट्रांजिशन टू पर्सनल अटैक्स immediately on social media. That becomes an important element in this case as well. Instant gratification and vilification. Social media instantly gratifies. Gratifies मतलब pleasure or attainment. Instantly gratify, makes a person a hero immediately or vilifies the person immediately. There is no middle path here, no gray area in social media. You are either a hero, as in a big hero, or you are a villain there. So instant gratification and vilification by social media, that becomes an issue here. Whether the person, whether जो हमारा protagonist है इसके अंदर family जो person है आप हो, क्या आप सही हो? कुछ लोगों की नज़र में आप बिल्कुल सही हो, कुछ लोगों की नज़र के अंदर आप बिल्कुल गलत हो. सामने वाले बच्चे जो जो एक्यूज जिसने फेक वीडियो डाला है कि उनकी बुलिंग हुई है, कुछ लोग बोल रहे हैं कि वो सही है, कुछ लोग बोल रहे हैं कि इंस्टेंट ग्रेटिफिकेशन एंड विलिफिकेशन, नो स्कोप ऑफ मिडिल पाथ इन सोशल मीडिया डिस्कशंस, एथिकल इश्यूज इन सोशल मीडिया, प्राइवेसी ऑब्वियसली, a child has been harassed, mentally harassed, or some other children, their privacy is being revealed through your video, that means there is an issue of privacy here involved here. Clear to all? Pros and cons of the videos, that is to counter that fake propaganda that is there. क्या उसके pros and cons है, जो आपने वीडियो बनाया है उसके pros and cons क्या है, पॉजिटिव नेगेटिव क्या है? प्रोज तो ऑब्वियस है कि भाई जो करेक्शन ऑफ रॉन्ग है, जो फेक न्यूज आई है उसको आप करेक्ट कर रहे हो बाय प्रोवाइडिंग काउंटर इन्फॉर्मेशन, द करेक्ट इन्फॉर्मेशन फ्रॉम योर पार्ट. नाउ वी हैव टू बिलीव व्हाट इज गिवन इन द केस. केस में कहीं ऐसा नहीं लिखा है, केस जिस परस्पेक्टिव से लिखा गया है, केस में nowhere it is written that let's say you bullied those children, the ones that you walked past. केस में नहीं लिखा है. So you'll have to believe the language and tone of the case. Please don't come to me or ask yourself this question in your mind that what if those who have made this video, first video जो है, what if they are right. हमारे पास ये स्कोप नहीं है, हमको कंजेक्चर में नहीं जाना है, हमको इफ एंड देन बट ये सब नहीं लगाने हैं. जो केस में लिखा है उसको अज्यूम करना है कि वो सही है, तो हम अज्यूम करेंगे कि ये जो फैमिली है ये विक्टिम है और जो सामने वाले वो बदमाश है, हमको ये अज्यूम करके चलना है. सो राइट डाउन दैट correction of the wrong, that is some fake information that has been given, you are trying to correct it via this counter video. Direct communication, you are trying to communicate directly to the court of people, opinion makers, you are directly trying to communicate with them, large audience. Transparently communicate the entire incidents rather than some people simply putting out some clips or some small part. You're communicating the entire incident as to what happened through your video. Opportunity to take back the narrative. A narrative has been set that you being the powerful government servant have bullied children. लिखा ना पहली लाइन में कि आप government servant हो. You being the powerful government servant has bullied children. Now you're taking by the narrative by bringing out your side of the story. That becomes another pro of this thing. You're trying to win some public support. अब ये एक court of public चल रहा है यहाँ पे कि आप सही हो आप गलत हो. court of public चल रहा है कि जनता किसको like कर रही है. कोई लीगल एस्पेक्ट ऑब्वियसली है, यहाँ पे बुलिंग वाला एस्पेक्ट है, इट इज अ क्राइम, दैट इज समथिंग दैट हैज टू बी एड्रेस. बट हाँ आप पब्लिक सपोर्ट पाना चाह रहे हो, दैट इज अ प्रो हियर. कॉन्स क्या है, नेगेटिव एस्पेक्ट क्या है वीडियो बनाने के, बताओ अपने आप से बताओ क्या हो सकते हैं. वॉयलेशन ऑफ प्राइवेसी ऑब्वियसली है कि नहीं है. प्राइवेसी, चिल्ड्रन दे गेट एक्सपोज टू सोशल मीडिया, योर चाइल्ड एंड द अदर चिल्ड्रन दे गेट एक्सपोज. वॉयलेशन ऑफ प्राइवेसी, हाँ इट इज अ, इसी को और फॉर्मल लैंग्वेज में कैसे बोलेंगे, अगेन वो प्रैक्टिस से आएगा. फॉर्मल लैंग्वेज में कैसे बोलेंगे, इट इज अ स्लिपरी स्लोप. स्लिपरी स्लोप समझते हो ना, दैट वंस यू स्टार्ट, नाउ काउंटर आर्ग्यूमेंट, देन आर्ग्यूमेंट, काउंटर आर्ग्यूमेंट, आर्ग्यूमेंट, देन नाउ देयर इज नो एंड टू दिस डिस्कशन. नाउ इट इज इन पब्लिक डोमेन, एज इन नाउ द पब्लिक इज द जज. They will put a video, you will put a video, they will put a video, you will put a video. It is a slippery slope now. That means things are going to get dirty in this case, and the children who are going to suffer. It may amplify the effect on children. Privacy of the family gets exposed, the child may suffer even more boycott at the school, amplification of the effects of social media. Privacy of family gets exposed even more. Slippery slope of allegations and counter allegations. Possibility of miscommunication. आपने एक भी सेंटेंस में कुछ कॉमा इधर उधर लगा दिया, गलत हो गया, तो उसका मिसइंटरप्रिटेशन हो सकता है. क्लिप आ जाएंगे सोशल मीडिया के ऊपर, देखो ये पढ़ा रहा है, ये बोल रहा है क्लास के अंदर, है ना. मेरा मत डालना है प्लीज. है मीम्स बन जाएंगे. हाँ, may be violative of code of conduct of civil servants because you're a civil servant, hence there are restrictions on how do you communicate with the social media with the public. So if you're doing this thing, that it may violate the code of conduct as well. So ये हमारे कॉन्स हैं यहाँ पे, हमको लिखना है आंसर में. ठीक है, आसान है लेकिन हाँ स्पेसिफिक पॉइंट्स अब लिखेंगे तो अब ज़्यादा मार्क्स मिलने की चांसेस हैं. एनी क्वेश्चंस? ये कम रह गया है 250 वर्ड्स के लिए. मैंने इतने जो शब्द बोले हैं पिछले 2-2.5 घंटे में, वो तुमको हर एक आंसर में 500-500 वर्ड लिखने के लिए इनेबल कर देंगे. तुम तो स्टूडेंट हो यार अपने, तुम तो जब even if you are not a student of Vision IAS, you would have seen, I'm sure you would have come across, let's say Vision IAS test series answers. तो जो हमारे टेस्ट सीरीज के आंसर होते हैं उनमें यही पॉइंट लिखे होते हैं इसी तरीके से, और वो 500-500 वर्ड का एक आंसर होता है. 500 वर्ड का तो आंसर नहीं लिखना है एग्जाम के अंदर, 300 350 वर्ड के अंदर कंप्रेस करना है. तो certainly this will enable you to write a really good answer in a short amount of time. But it depends upon how you ये फर्स्ट पार्ट जो है ना मेच्योरिटी वाला, जो मैंने आपको बोला था, इफ यू आर एबल टू डू दिस थिंग then this automatically flows. If you identify the issue wrong, then nothing can, then you are not able to get address the case properly. ठीक है, चलो. ऑन द स्पॉट, अभी अब एग्जाम में तो कोई सोर्स नहीं खोज सकते. अच्छा चलो बता देता हूं. केस स्टडीज का सोर्स तुम पूछना चाह रहे हो, बेसिकली क्या है? केस स्टडी का सोर्स 100% न्यूज़पेपर्स है, 100%. To those who write mains, I always suggest that read 2 newspapers at least. जो मेंस लिख रहे हैं मैं सबको बोलता हूँ 2 अखबार तो पढ़ने ही पढ़ने हैं आपको. 100% of case studies have been inspired from one or the other event that took place and was reported in newspapers. All these cases that we have come across, harassment at workplace, 100% ये अखबार में आया होगा during last 1 year or 2 years. These are common issues. कोई भी यहाँ पे आपको कुछ ऐसा अलग सा इशू तो नहीं दिख रहा है कि भाई कुछ चीज हो गई हो. कोई कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस का इशू अगर मेजर हुआ होगा तो देन सम सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट की केस स्टडी जरूर पूछी गई होगी एग्जाम के अंदर. कुछ मिसअप्रोप्रिएशन ऑफ फंड्स बाय समबडी हुआ होगा, इवन फॉर सम गुड पर्पस, सो कॉल्ड गुड पर्पस, देन केस स्टडी वुड बी आस्क्ड इन द एग्जाम. सो ये जितनी भी केस स्टडीज हैं सारी की सारी करंट इवेंट से ही इंस्पायर्ड होती हैं. And newspapers, you will find that what should be a good way to act. How did a particular person handle those cases? These are mentioned. जैसे इंडियन एक्सप्रेस में फर्स्ट पेज के ऊपर जो लास्ट में फर्स्ट पेज में सबसे नीचे कई बार स्टोरी आती है दैट समथिंग दैट हैज हैपेंड एट सम पर्टिकुलर प्लेस. तो वो कई बार बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट सोर्स होता है केस स्टडी का, वहाँ से डायरेक्टली केस स्टडीज पूछी जाती हैं. तो वहीं से हमको पढ़ना है. ठीक है, कोई और स्पेशल सोर्स कहीं नहीं है, कहीं नहीं मिले क्योंकि केस स्टडी किसी मटेरियल में कहीं नहीं छुपी हुई है. कोई ऐसा देयर इज नो holy grail here. Fine. All right. Thank you so much everybody for attending, for being with us since last in these 4 sessions, paper 1, 2, 3, 4. This concludes the open sessions of all these topics, all these exams that we have taken up, all these mains exams. I hope you people have learned how to write good answers, quick answers, score good marks. I hope you will be able to learn and implement these things in your answers yourself. Take care, all the best, bye bye, see you. All right.